565 points up. That is the Sensex. Nifty is also up by nearly 750 points. Good sentiment, hoping that this peace lasts. But IRGC cannot maintain these maximalist positions because those are red lines for the Arab nations and Israel alike. Ballistic missile technology, nuclear enrichment, and of course these proxies. General Pandey.
Yeah, so firstly, Sensex are, I don't want to use the word, but these are all players of making money by using sentiments at that point of time. And I think right now the sentiments are positive, but how it will play out, we have to see. The issue about the maximalist agenda, which I think Ambassador Dogra is so very correctly articulated, I don't want to add anything. But the fact remains that are the Arabs happy with it? What are they party to this entire process of peace? Is it because America is now tired? When did it change? And when I look at inflection point in this change in American perception and behavior towards the operation is when this whole process of evacuation was carried out or rescue operation was carried out of a failed, botched operation which took place in Isfahan. So, while there will be very good English spoken about by Trump, Vance, Pete Hegseth about the entire taking out of the two pilots which were about 100 miles apart. But I think that was one point when those losses have occurred and they've realized that they will not be able to take out that 440 kgs worth of uranium. They have gone on this part of looking at ceasefire. But, I will not like to trust Americans or Trump now. In this 14 days or in past about 10 days of this whole thing, there is something which will be brewing within Iran, right? And that will be possibility of a change of some sort of a regime or control or some people who will be oriented to the American view of the region may be getting engaged. So there is something which is coming out, Anand. Everything doesn't look very, very clear because that is why Iran is contesting the way it is contesting, because the IRGC knows that in case that change which is being attempted by the Americans and they are buying time for it, if that happens, they are finished. I guess that is where the thing, and look at within 2 hours of announcement of ceasefire or the pause, you saw the missiles raising towards Israel, towards Jerusalem, the firing going on. So this is still open case. It is not shut down. It is not about parlays. It is going to be actually what is happening behind the scenes by the Americans, Israelis and the Gulf countries in Iran, what is going to happen in next couple of days. And then last, please understand, every time Trump has said that we are progressing well on a talk, and 1 day, 2 day prior, he has bombed or started. It happened in Midnight Hammer. It happened on 28th of Feb. It has happened yesterday when 12 hours before he started bombing out. So one just doesn't know that what actually is the plan of the Americans in this. One thing is very clear. The Iranian plan is known. Iranians, till the time IRGC under control, they are going to get reparations. They are going to continue to dominate, and they are not going to let go of the proxy warriors. The moment they let go of the proxy warriors, they are finished. Iran is finished in the region.
Right. We've got Mangalam Malu joining us. Mangalam, just hang on because President Trump has just posted, taking our viewers through this, and I'll come across to you to talk on the markets. First up, Donald Trump has said a big day for world peace. This is on Truth Social. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Likewise, so has everyone else. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Iran can start the reconstruction process. We will be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well. Hanging around to make sure that everything goes well. I feel confident that it will, just like we are experiencing in the US. this could be the golden age of the Middle East, Donald Trump. Now, let's read this again, viewers, because he's saying a lot of things here. One, he's saying Iran wants it to happen. So do we, because we've also had enough. Then he turns around and says, we will be helping with the traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz. What does this mean? Because then he's saying there will be positive action, big money will be made. Who will make this big money? Iran can start the reconstruction process. So does he mean that there will be tariff charged at the Hormuz which will be shared between US allies and Iran? Because he's saying reconstruction. Then we will be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around, and he puts it in quotes, hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well. So does this mean US naval ship movement into this region? I feel confident that it will, just like we are experiencing in the US. This could be the golden age of the Middle East. How would one decipher this, or how would one break this down? Siddhant now joins us with more. This is another post. Somewhere is Trump saying they are now going to be a permanent presence in the Strait of Hormuz, jointly patrolled with the Iranians. Is that an inference one can make from this post, hanging around?
That could be his justification of suddenly announcing ceasefire without two sides coming to the tables, Anand. And in fact, there is a lot of criticism and heat which President Trump is facing right now from people within the Republican Party, Democrats perhaps criticizing him for letting Iran control the Hormuz, right, so on and so forth. There are many points of contention. So now he's justifying by saying that there will be lots of positive action. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic build-up. Now, I don't understand this terminology, traffic build-up, what exactly President Trump's want to say here. But what all I can recall, Anand, is that that last week he, in a soundbite, he said, when this question was asked to him, that who is going to control Hormuz, he said that I and the new Ayatollah. He was referring to Moshtaba Khamenei. So I don't know what's the game plan in President Trump's mind. They have got Oman into the picture. Now, Iranians also say that Oman and Iran will jointly control the Hormuz, and Oman, given its ties with the United States, neutral player, so on and so forth. So perhaps Oman could be the representative of the West there.
Okay, give us 5 minutes. We'll deconstruct this post again with General Pandey, Ambassador Dogra, and Or Shakad also. Just quickly going across to look at the positives on the market side with Mangalam Malu. Mangalam, morning. Thank you for your patience. But the Sensex is zooming, nearly a 3.5% bump up, both with Nifty and Sensex in early trade.
That's correct. So ever since the skirmish started, the Nifty had lost about 3,000 points. So it was only fair that at a point when you did see some signs of peace, there would be some recovery in the markets as well. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And, today is one part of it all where we've seen a big up move of 3.5%, like you pointed out, on both the Nifty as well as the Sensex. But the last 3 or 4 trading sessions, the commentary that was coming around, as the street was awaiting some sort of deadline ending, there was a sense of people buying at lower levels, which told you that maybe a lot of it has been done and maybe we're closer to the bottom than we are to the top. And that's exactly how it's played out. Over the last 3 trading sessions, the Nifty was actually closing positive after 6 weeks of losses. So we had seen a big gash already. And add to all of this, we also got some of the updates coming in from companies as how they performed in the 4th quarter. All these numbers looked a lot better than what the street was fearing. So far, it looks like, the street is looking at going beyond this. Even as the uncertainty around the war continues, the street has put a number to it, and that number on the Nifty is around 22,200. From there itself, we've seen a near 1,700 point rally, and that's exactly what's reflecting in the market. Add to all of this, crude oil prices coming down, the impact that it has positively on our market is the rupee strengthened past 93 as well, closer to 92.5.
True, but where's the money coming in from? Is it all domestic investors, or is there some FIIs also coming in?
Well, it's all domestic investors. Unfortunately, the FIIs over the last 40 days or so on a daily basis have been selling over $1 billion.
Yeah.
The question is whether the FIIs return after this piece or not. The good part, however, is that domestic money will continue to flow even as, we did see that during bad times. We have around 31,000 crores of capital coming into the market every month via SIP. So domestic money is holding up the market. The fact that markets recovering would only, take away the risk of that money going away as well. So far, it's a foregone conclusion that the FIs have not liked our market for a while right now, but there are multiple reasons for that. This war isn't the only one. Let's see whether they return or not. For them to return, obviously, the economy, has to start doing well. The earnings have to start picking up as well, and a lot of other things have to happen. We have to have an AI play, etc. But so far, the fact that the markets recovered from lows and the things look better going ahead takes away the risk of domestic money not coming back as well. I mean, this 31,000, this fear was if that starts to dissipate, then the markets could have gone lower. But that's not happening now, and that's a good point.
What's pushing, or which stocks are pushing up this surge? Oil cos, or are there others too?
No, it is largely a lot of the companies which saw the biggest cuts during this skirmish. So obviously, it's the oil and gas companies, the oil marketing companies which are doing extremely well because they see some of their under recoveries coming off. We have Interglobe Aviation, Indigo, so we have airline companies doing extremely well. The large stock that was the worst hit during this issue was L&T because nearly 30-35% of their orders come in from West Asia. That stock's up around 10% as well. And then you have a bottom list of a tail of all the stocks which would be impacted by higher crude oil prices now sensing a lot of relief. So you have the paint companies, the FMCG companies, their packaging costs which are related to crude, their prices had increased as well. So now those worries around their margins have given them some sort of relief. So we are seeing an up move across the board in the market.
Right. Thank
and
you for
obviously, because of all of this, the macros look a lot better, and we have the financial stocks doing well too.
Right, and viewers note the new logo of CNBC TV18 that's flashing on our screens too. So that's another change that's happened for the better. Mangalam Malu, thank you. Yeah,
it says upwards and onwards.
Upwards and onwards, like the markets today. Have a great day, Mangalam. We'll try and come back to you in a bit. And viewers, we'll keep the markets update at the bottom of our screen. You'll see that flashing time and again to just keep you in the know of what's happening as far as trade is concerned, both at the Sensex and also on the Nifty. Thank you for that. Quickly going back, viewers, let's go back to the Trump post, the latest one. And this needs a bit of a deep dive. Or Shakid, as I read this out again, your thoughts. Siddhant will also join us. But first, our experts, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, diplomatically, would you want to dissect this? Quickly reading it. Or Shakid, your thoughts first. A big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough, he says. Then he says, likewise, so has everyone else. That means including him. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Iran can start the reconstruction process. Can we just come back down a little if we can? Okay, we just hold this here. If we can come back down. This part is interesting. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz. So clearly he understands it's chock-a-block there. That's why the traffic buildup. They'll try and ease that traffic. That's what he's trying to say. This part. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Let's just bring this up a bit. Put the big money part, lots of action, big money part, and then Iran can start the reconstruction process. And just pull this up a bit, can we? If we can just scroll this up a bit. We will be loading up. Yeah, just stay there. Yeah, stay there. Stay there, please. Just hold. Okay, this is what. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Iran can start reconstruction process. We will be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around to make sure everything goes well. Now, please interpret this. Or Shakid, what does this mean?
I believe that there are three goals for this post. One, of course, needs indeed an interpreter to sometimes understand some of the comments that are made by President Trump. But the way that I interpret it is that, first of all, he wants to spread a level of optimism. You see, after every ceasefire that has took place, including in Gaza and elsewhere, you see kind of like a similar rhetoric, trying to create a positive atmosphere in the air, potentially for starting these discussions on the right foot. So it doesn't seem like everybody is pessimistic, and kind of like by default this whole litigation and negotiation would be missed and undermined. So that's one. Two, there is a message there that is economic, big money to be made. First and foremost, Trump, before he's a president, he's a businessman. He understands how the markets work, and he anticipated that there would be a rise in stocks and a decrease in oil prices. And what he's trying to do through messaging is basically amplify these positive effects and compound them in a way that would benefit the market. And because this has been, in fact, not just a global concern, but certainly a concern for his domestic constituents as well. And the third goal of this is to claim a level of stakeholdership as it pertains to the day after, so to speak, on the Strait of Hormuz. Why? Because, as I mentioned earlier, there is still a litigation to be made as it pertains to what would become the Strait of Hormuz on the day after. I do agree with the analysis that Oman, as a player here, would be kind of like, in a sense, for lack of a better term, a proxy of the United States, kind of like representing U.S. interests in this context, because they have been defined, at least according to Iran, as the other stakeholder as it pertains to the benefit of the Strait of Hormuz. So basically, through niceties, basically the U.S. is saying we are a part of this and we will remain a part of this in the future.
Correct. So they will be hanging around. So does that mean joint patrolling, joint taxing of the Strait of Hormuz, money to be made on both sides, and Iran will get the money, $1 million? Is that the sum that's going to be eventually agreed upon to try and per ship that passes to try and get the reconstruction, start the reconstruction process? So regime change, business with the next Ayatollah, Mojtaba Khamenei in this case, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, will you take on these lines? Big money, reconstruction, hanging around, supplies of all kinds.
Well, as your guest from Israel said, Trump always thinks in terms of money. He's a businessman. So his message is to his constituency, which is the business constituency of Kushner, Witkoff and others. But the entire message that he's given is typical Trump style. He's addressing his own American public, especially the MAGA constituency. But he's also sending out a message to the world that, look, America has not suffered very much in this war, and that, in fact, we have many things to gain, including hanging around. That America has always been hanging around the Gulf because it has so many bases and is not emptying those bases despite Iranian demands. So that is the sense I get from hanging around. As far as big money is to be made from reconstruction, that remains to be seen whether Iran allows American companies to take part in reconstruction. Iran has two aims. One is to use the $2 million per ship for reconstruction. And secondly, it has, in some messages, said that it has to be compensated for all the damage it has suffered because of American war, American-Israeli war. Whether that is paid in form of reparations remains to be seen. But at the moment, I think that thought is premature.
Right. We are approaching the top of the hour, so compelled to take a break. But a quick word from Siddhant, if I can. Just a minute, Siddhant, as we interpret. So there are various ways to interpret this. He's thought this out very well, Trump, while writing. It's not like the Eastern rivalry. Yes.
Anand, very quick takeaway. Perhaps this by doing this post, President Trump dilutes the main point of contention, which is control over Hormuz. In fact, right now he is hinting at U.S. US allies and Iran to jointly be controlling the Hormuz. In fact, short while back, we all were discussing here in the studios also, Anand, that who is going to control Hormuz, whether US will accept Iranian control, so on and so forth. So by putting out this post, he has made US position very clear that there is no point of contention as far as the Hormuz control is concerned. We are going to jointly, run the Hormuz Strait. So making the Trump administration position clear in this Truth Social post.
Yes, quickly, I'm just going to check how much time we have. See, Israel has said that they are going to continue their action in Lebanon. Trump comes out and says, General Pandey, that we are going to be hanging around the Strait of Hormuz. Does that mean that it's not just military, territorial patrol, naval patrol in the seas also, watching Iran like a hawk and trying to guard the Strait of Hormuz on this side? Joint patrolling, is that going to be the next way, the way forward?
The first thing, Anand, is that somebody in the Trump administration has made a lot of money in this whole short selling business which has been happening. So one doesn't know that this tweet which he has posted out of very positive news may just turn around by the evening and become something very negative to start the whole stock to come down. There's one part. The second is he has been very clear on one thing, that Hormuz will be controlled by him, right? And it will be with Oman, with Iran. But when you look at the overall cost of war, which America has incurred, is billions and billions of dollars. The cost which has been incurred upon Iran in terms of losses, and the cost which has been incurred upon the Gulf countries, that needs to come out from somewhere. And if it happens to come out through reconstruction, through the control of Hormuz, by taxing, by toll, by levying toll, all those things will happen. You just can't let any sort of imagination go away from the mind of Trump, who's a businessman first, a politician, or a statesman. He's not a statesman at all, but yes, a politician later.
Right. We're going to take a very, very short break. On that note, to all our experts and to Siddhant, thank you very much. We continue the coverage, viewers. We come back to this post. This has got the entire deal. This post has the deal in place. We'll dissect it further. Stay with us.
Exploding and never.
There has been peace that's been called. There are traffic on the streets, cars jammed on the streets. There is celebration, but to a certain extent, many would want to look at it with a pinch of salt. That while there will be thousands and perhaps millions who would come out and say this war ends, this also signal perhaps a certain messaging that will go across to this current regime. There was a big uprising in January, viewers. Will those people now have the courage to come back on the streets with perhaps the confidence that they're not going to be shot point blank? So these are questions which will remain. What will happen over the course of the next 60 to 90 days if 60 to 90 days if this ceasefire holds, if there is a cessation of hostilities from both sides? Will there be a transition within Persia itself? The transition from the Republic of Iran to what was erstwhile Persia. These are all questions that remain. There are people who are standing here, they're standing with the flags, but do you see in the body language the kind of jubilation that was expected or celebration that was expected? So that's the reason why there is a little bit of hesitance in trying to say, are these celebrations forced, muted? There is no revelry. People are out on the streets. They are saying, thank God there is peace. But is this actually a victory celebration? That is something. Yes, there will be a group among the Persian public who will be supporting the regime, who will be happy about this, and who would claim that Iran has won and this regime has won. But the questions are, where is Mr. Mujtaba Khamenei? Why is he being AWOL all this while? Is there going to be a regime change or perhaps a different leader going forward? How much of information has Iran actually withheld? What are the losses that the regime has suffered, and at what cost will they be able to stand up again? Many, many questions, and we'll try and address all of that with our guests in a bit. But first, we've got news coming through. First on the celebrations, Akash, if you look at it, there are people there, but the flags are not being waved with the kind of zest or fervor that one would have expected. They seem to have all come out, or have they been exhorted to come out? These are all questions. There's a lot that can be read from pictures. And we've also got, Akash, are you there with us? All right, we'll go across to Akash in a bit. We've got more news coming through. The 2-week ceasefire plan, more news coming through. The 2-week ceasefire plan, there has been peace that's been called. There are traffic on the streets, cars jammed on the streets. There is celebration, but to a certain extent, many would want to look at it with a pinch of salt, that while there will be thousands and perhaps millions who would come out and say this war ends, this also signal perhaps a certain messaging that will go across to this current regime. There was a big uprising in January, viewers. Will those people now have the courage to come back on the streets with perhaps the confidence that they're not going to be shot point blank? So these are questions which will remain. What will happen over the course of the next 60 to 90 days if 60 to 90 days if this ceasefire holds, if there is a cessation of hostilities from both sides? Will there be a transition within Persia itself? The transition from the Republic of Iran to what was erstwhile Persia? These are all questions that remain. There are people who are standing here, they're standing with the flags, but do you see in the body language the kind of jubilation that was expected or celebration that was expected? So that's the reason why there is a little bit of hesitance in trying to say, are these celebrations forced, muted? There is no revelry. People are out on the streets. They are saying, thank God there is peace. But is this actually a victory celebration? That is something. Yes, there will be a group among the Persian public who will be supporting the regime, who will be happy about this, and who would claim that Iran has won and this regime has won. But the questions are, where is Mr. Mujtaba Khamenei? Why is he being AWOL all this while? Is there going to be a regime change or perhaps a different leader going forward? How much of information has Iran actually withheld? What are the lost
national ambitions, regional pride, high-stakes alliances, and leaders battling for every vote? CNN News 18 brings you the ultimate election battleground. Battle for the states. The road to power begins here.
There has been peace that's been called. There are traffic on the streets, cars jammed on the streets. There is celebration, but to a certain extent, many would want to look at it with a pinch of salt, that while there will be thousands and perhaps millions who would come out and say this war ends, this also signal perhaps a certain messaging that will go across to this current regime. There was a big uprising in January, viewers. Will those people now have the courage to come back on the streets with perhaps the confidence that they're not going to be shot point blank? So these are questions which will remain. What will happen over the course of the next 60 to 90 days if 60 to 90 days if this ceasefire holds, if there is a cessation of hostilities from both sides? Will there be a transition within Persia itself? The transition from the Republic of Iran to what was erstwhile Persia? These are all questions that remain. There are people who are standing here, they're standing with the flags, but do you see in the body language the kind of jubilation that was expected or celebration that was expected? So that's the reason why there is a little bit of hesitance in trying to say, are these celebrations forced, muted? There is no revelry. People are out on the streets. They are saying, thank God there is peace. But is this actually a victory celebration? That is something. Yes, there will be a group among the Persian public who will be supporting the regime, who will be happy about this, and who would claim that Iran has won and this regime has won. But the questions are, where is Mr. Mujtaba Khamenei? Why is he being AWOL all this while? Is there going to be a regime change or perhaps a different leader going forward? How much of information has Iran actually withheld? What are the losses that the regime has suffered, and at what cost will they be able to stand up again? Many questions, and we'll try and address all of that with our guests in a bit. But first, we've got news coming through. First on this celebrations, Akash, if you look at it, there are people...
An 11th hour ceasefire has been announced by the US and Iran. This as Israel has already declared that they will continue to target Lebanon. Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18 with me, Akanksha Swaroop, and with me is Kritsween Walia.
And we're going to break down that all-important story. Questions that remain still, questions that remain unanswered, and really are going to decide which way this is headed. The next few hours, very crucial. We break it down. First up, the top headlines. After warning civilizational end, Donald Trump backs down. Iran and United States reach conditional ceasefire for 2 weeks. Strait of Hormuz to open up.
That's 10 conditions for ending the conflict. Claims US has agreed on lifting of sanctions against Iran, no attacks on axis of resistance, and continuance of nuclear enrichment.
Despite agreeing to ceasefire, Iran claims they reserve control over Hormuz to levy fee to ensure safe passage to ships. Iran to share proceeds of fee with Oman. Donald Trump says US will help with traffic build-up in the strait.
Disquiet in Israel over Iran-United States ceasefire. Reports claim Trump has dialed Netanyahu to inform him of successful negotiations.
And Asian markets trade in green on the back of ceasefire announcement. Oil prices slump, yet to reach pre-war levels though.
Republicans hail peacemaker Trump, but Democrats still skeptical. Slam loss of face for Donald Trump. Chorus for his removal continues as Americans pay price of the war.
Pakistan Prime Minister Abbas Sharif boasts of mediation in Iran-US conflict, but users on social media expose him. Abbas Sharif's Twitter post drafted by US leaves Pakistan red-faced.
Pakistan plays host to Iran-US talks to finalize conditional truce. Tehran confirms the meeting in Islamabad. A 15-day timeline for permanent solution. The meeting all set to take place on 10th of April in Islamabad.
Well, the conditional ceasefire has been reached upon. The focus is now moved on to in-person talks. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff will hold these talks with Iran in Islamabad this Friday.
Pakistan gloats, but is China the real mediator? This because US President has said he believes China was also involved in pushing Iran to the negotiating table.
Well, as we've been discussing, it was an 11th hour ceasefire. With just over an hour left before his deadline, US President Trump pulled back from the brink, announcing a 2-week ceasefire with Iran. The decision followed direct appeals from Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and also Field Marshal Asim Munir, who urged Washington to hold back the planned strikes. Moments after the announcement, Donald Trump struck an optimistic note, calling it a big day for world peace. And he also said Iran has had enough and wants the conflict to end. Donald Trump further said the pause in military action is conditional, subject to Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So one of the strictest conditions set forth by the United States, possibly was agreed to, is why we saw this confirmation from the US President, once again pressed on the need for the strait to be reopened for safe and immediate passage. Tehran also agreed to the ceasefire, but with a clear warning that this is not the end of the war. Iran, in fact, has come out to say any violation will trigger a sharp response. For now, there is a tense pause in this conflict. It came dangerously close to an escalation. Remember, the world is watching really whether you can join the dots at this moment and whether this ceasefire can truly last. Whether this is only restricted to letter or also extends to spirit. That's the question being asked. Let's talk about more breaking news that's coming in.
We're getting in breaking inputs. This is in fact the Truth Social post by the US President. He's in fact taken to Truth Social post ever since he's in fact announced that ceasefire. He's been doing so. Let's quickly play this post out for our viewers on the big screen. This is what the US President has got to say. that it's a big day for world peace. Going to request my director to in fact hold this post at the moment. Now, the important part of this post is that the US President has announced that they will be loading the Strait of Hormuz with traffic build-up. There will be lots of positive action. If you look at the post that's gone on to declare that there will be lots of positive action, big money will be made, we'll be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around over there in order to make sure that everything goes well. I feel confident that it will, just like we are experiencing in the US. This could be the golden age of the Middle East. A big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Likewise, so has everyone else. The United States of America will help with the traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, why is this post so important? Remember, first of all, to break it down for you, the US President has always claimed that it is not the United States' headache to come up with the reparations for Iran. He, in fact, in the initial days of the war, had even said that the cost will be borne by the US allies in West Asia, that included Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, and other countries. But now there's been a change in the stance. So the US President playing very smart out there. He's using it not just as a leverage was being used by Iran, Siddhant, but now the US President also doing
that's right. Going by the vocabulary used by President Trump in this post, perhaps it's businessman Trump, speaking with his constituents, and he's saying that I will make everything all right. We'll make big money, traffic build up, so on and so forth. So the hints which I could understand is that US President is making things very clear. In fact, he's diluting the main point of contention, which is Hormuz Strait, that it's most likely US allies and Iran will jointly be controlling. He's also talking about big money being involved. Perhaps he is also hinting at the fact that even the United States or US allies are also going to be benefited from the ships transiting through the Hormuz.
Why that matters, Siddhant, take our viewers through what the toll fee is going to be about.
Right.
And it's not just friendly nations. You're looking at other US allies and their vessels passing through the strait, which means big money for Iran.
Of course, Akanksha, because so far, Strait of Hormuz is an international waters. It's not Omanese or Iranian water, and there was never any toll which was applied for any vessel to be transiting through the Hormuz. This would be the first time in the history that the vessels will be paying money to Iran, to Oman, or perhaps maybe United States for the ships to be transiting. And Iran got this act passed in their parliament.
Yes.
It's an act now in Iran, and Iran says that this is how we are going to make money for and compensate for the damages.
And that is why the US President maintaining over there that they will hold traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Siddhant and I will continue to bring all the latest, but first up, let's quickly go across to Chris.
There are questions that remain unanswered, so let's quickly take you through some of these questions because they also lie at the heart of what means really for all stakeholders concerned going forward. What has the United States gained after 40 days if the passage via Hormuz remains at IRGC's behest? Very clear that Iran maintains that we still have control over the strait. Despite the 40-day conflict, this is what it's come down to, and that's making everyone wonder at this point in time, what did US really gain of this? Can the alignment hold among key players like Israel? Because Israel, remember, while it welcomed the mediation which was held by Pakistan, while it did say that it stands with the United States of America in this decision, it's also made it amply clear that they're going to continue to target Hezbollah sites in all of Lebanon. That remains another core concern, remember. The next question being asked is, can Donald Trump sell the ceasefire as a win to the domestic audiences? Which takes us to the question, or rather the numbers that we've been putting out, viewers, on how his approval ratings have been slipping. And since they've been sliding, there were a lot of concerns that Americans had been raising. Does this really address, does this quote-unquote ceasefire with so many questions unanswered really address America's concerns? Will the truce produce tangible outcomes or simply delay return to the conflict? Is this really a ceasefire, two-week ceasefire, or possibly a temporary truce and something that could really hit the pause button at any given time, given how so many of these questions remain unanswered and there are too many dots that need to be joined still. Not all is adding up and all is favoring a concrete ceasefire. Has Donald Trump normalized coercive escalation as a diplomatic tool? Now, all the threats that were coming in from the US president, the social media posts that many had taken strong offense to, has that really paid off at the end of the day? And this is possibly being seen as now the biggest diplomatic strategy that's been adopted by President Donald Trump. Whether or not this favors him is a question for another day. But Akanksha is joining us with more in the meanwhile.
Krithween, thank you for taking us through all of those 10 questions. In fact, they all are very critical because the big question is, will this ceasefire hold or not? Why are we asking that question? Because Israel has already declared, in fact, Benjamin Netanyahu saying that they will continue to target the terror proxies in Lebanon, which is, of course, the Hezbollah. Let's quickly go across to Akash, who will help us understand better why all parties are still not aligned on the same page.
Right. So, you see, Akanksha, there are contradictions, of course. Lebanon factor is an important one given the fact that straight from the starting of this war, we have been seeing that how there is a second front that Israel is fighting with. And now Israel is saying, and somewhere we have got this soundbite from the Prime Minister himself. He says that, Lebanon should be, out of, in fact, the factor should be out of the sort of points that we are discussing. As far as Iran is concerned, so their primary conditions are that, you need to stop all the sort of activities that you are carrying out against groups like Hezbollah. And on the other hand, we have Israel that is coming out with this point that Lebanon should be kept out of the entire negotiation or the ceasefire thing. Whether or not this is going to happen and what is going to happen is a big question. But yes, contradictions are there. And they, of course, want to increase their buffer zone part. They, of course, want this particular condition to be used as some sort of advantage for them, given the fact that they have been fighting against Hezbollah for last so many years. Of course, there was a ceasefire, but then it got started because of this new war, and the initiation came after the rockets that were fired from Lebanon. Of course, Hezbollah was behind those rockets, and now they want that their buffer zone should be increased, and this is what the main point of contention is.
Absolutely, and Hezbollah was one terror proxy that in fact has not just been fortifying Iran. They know that it is these terror proxies, whether it is Hezbollah or Houthis, which are currently also Iran's major part of strength. More importantly, Hezbollah is one terror proxy that actually jumped into this war ever since it broke out on 27th of February. Let's quickly go back to Krithween, who's bringing us the latest.
Let's quickly go over to expert voices joining in this morning. Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the United States, is our first guest. Good morning, ma'am. Also joining us is Sarah Claire, a foreign policy analyst. Ms. Claire, if I can begin with you first to really understand what would be your opening remarks given what we've heard so far from President Donald Trump. He's of course been very active on social media as well. He says it's a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. But the biggest question mark at the moment is that even if Iran has agreed to open Strait of Hormuz, it comes with a condition. They're still going to hold control over the strait. And let's not forget, possibly could be charging a $2 million fee for each of the vessels to transit through the strait as well. Would you call this a successful diplomacy or a successful 2-week ceasefire to begin with?
Well, I think the fact that there's a ceasefire is very positive news. I think that the points that have been brought forth about the Strait of Hormuz, that's not a loss to America. We didn't want to stay around and police that strait. So, the fact that Iran and possibly Oman are going to be working together on that, and they may be getting money to help rebuild their country, which, the American people, I'm sure, are happy to hear. We don't want to pay for that. These are all things that just help move the ceasefire process along. And what we're really concerned with is the enriched uranium and, making sure that Iran, does not have access to that. So I think that'll be the point that'll really tell whether these negotiations can go forward.
Ambassador Meera Shankar, if I could quickly bring you in on this conversation. Yeah. The challenges still are the fact that we are not seeing all parties on the same page. Israel has already declared that they will continue to target Lebanon, particularly Hezbollah remains a huge concern for them. Do you think this ceasefire is going to hold, given that there is a lot of difference in what's being claimed by Iran and the United States on the other hand?
Look, given the possibility of both countries entering an uncontrollable escalatory spiral, I think a ceasefire is a very good development, because it gives both countries the space to try to flesh out some kind of agreement, which might not meet, all the objectives that each has outlined, but will at least enable both sides to save face. For President Trump, I think he actually I think it was a strategic miscalculation to enter this war, because negotiations were going on with Iran on the nuclear issue, and Iran had been quite cooperative, going by what the foreign minister of Oman said, that Iran had been willing to agree to dismantle their enriched uranium down to non-weapons grade, to not enrich uranium in future, to give a commitment never to now or in the future seek nuclear weapons. This was the basis for a possible deal in the future. So at the end of the day, after all this Sturm and Drang, all this violence, you have a situation where America is now seeing the opening of a strait which was open at the commencement of the war as a success. So at the end of the day, I think it's still a strategic miscalculation for the US and Israel. I think they were expecting that with the assassination of the top leadership in Iran, there would be regime change, the system would collapse. That didn't happen. I think they did not give due weight to the Iranian tradition of martyrdom or shahadat, which is celebrated in their history and their literature, including the assassination of Hussein. And Iran has shown that it is willing to stand up. So I don't want to go into who is, benefiting from this, but I think it's a good thing for the global peace and for the world community.
Provided it holds, Ambassador, and provided it stays.
But I would like to hope, at this stage, when there is a ceasefire, yes, there is a gulf between the position of the two sides. Yes, there is a possibility that it may fall through the cracks again, but there's also a possibility that it may hold. And I would like to veer on the side of optimism, because I think that there's been terrible destruction in Iran. And for President Trump too, the war has been unpopular. And the prospect of a prolonged military engagement would be even more politically unpopular, would hit the pockets of US consumers, and possibly impact the midterms, which are looming in November. So I think in that sense, it's good politics for President Trump.
Ambassador Shankar, I'm so sorry to interrupt you there. I can see Colonel Rohit Dev has also joined in. I will quickly bring in Colonel Dev also into the conversation. But first up, we have some breaking inputs coming in. This as the Reserve Bank of India has announced that it is indeed going to maintain monetary stance at neutral, no change in rates. RBI Governor, in fact, has announced that repo rate is going to remain unchanged at 5.25%, saying that supply chain disruption can hit key sectors. It can also hurt growth. Henceforth, they have decided to not change the repo rate. Let's quickly go across to Pallavi, who will add more details to this breaking input coming in. Pallavi, how do you, in fact, put this into perspective if one were to look at no change in the repo rate? Indeed, India playing very guarded, as it always has since the beginning of the war.
Well, I mean, the biggest news and a big sign of relief to all those who take loans, particularly home loans, is that the repo rate remains unchanged. But it's a challenging time, as the RBI governor himself pointed out, that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is something which is going to have an impact on our growth story. The projection which was earlier given by the finance ministry for the growth for year 2026-27 was pitched at 7.2%. That has certainly come down to less than 7%, which is of course 6.9%, which itself tells the story about how, because of global external factors, and despite the fact that our agricultural, manufacturing sector and industrial sector have shown a growth up, and our trade figures still remain tilted in favor of India, with our imports falling much below our exports. The growth story is something which is going to be impacted by the Gulf War. Even though there seems to be a kind of a closure on this or a pause on the war, the rippling impact is still going to be felt, and therefore that was a very, very cautious statement which came in from the RBI governor, factoring in the realities, but at the same time giving a thumbs up in which our growth has increased over a period of time, and also that the repo rate is not being changed, which itself means that there's a confidence within the RBI that you don't need to change the repo rate at this point of time.
All right, many thanks, Pallavi, for joining us with that quick update. Of course, there was a lot of hope really from this announcement. But for now, as we keep up with our guests as well, we turn our attention back to the ongoing negotiations. Do remember that conversation will now move on to Islamabad, where officials will sit down together across the table and will be taking that conversation forward. But as ceasefire talks move ahead, serious questions are being raised about control of the Strait of Hormuz and what it could mean for global power dynamics. CNN's Anderson Cooper speaks with Fareed Zakaria, and here's that analysis for you. Take a look.
Are you optimistic about what's happened in the last hour?
Well, I'm optimistic in the sense that it's a lot better than what Donald Trump was threatening to,
wiping out civilization.
Wipe out, Iranian civilization, or any of those kind of broad-based expansions of and escalations. But, the negotiations here have been a kind of almost a casebook in how not to negotiate. So it's not surprising that the ceasefire is fragile. You have no actual negotiation going on between the two parties. You have no real trust built up between them. The last two negotiations, the United States was in with Iran. It essentially started bombing Iran in the middle of those negotiations. So it's not surprising that even though there does seem to be some kind of an agreement, it's very fragile and it's probably going to take a while to work out.
I mean, the president indicating tonight that this is kind of well along on things that possibly could be agreed on. It seems like the 10-point plan that Iran has talked about implies Iran control over the Strait of Hormuz, not just in this 2-week period, but afterward. This conflict has shifted from concern over Iran's nuclear program to let's get the Strait of Hormuz open, and you don't hear a lot about Iran's nuclear program now.
So you've hit the nail on the head. This is the single biggest strategic shift that's taken place and strategic loss for the United States and its allies. What this war has done is handed Iran a weapon that is far more usable than nuclear weapons, which is the Strait of Hormuz, choking off global oil supplies, essentially disrupting the global economy. And what they have realized is they have this weapon, they can use it, they can turn it on and off without will, and anything that institutionalizes it means that at this point the United States and its Gulf allies are in a sense hostage to Iranian good graces in order to get their product out.
So could there be a deal in which Iran remains in control of the Strait of Hormuz?
It seems like Iran will be very reluctant to give up that power and that authority. And just to give you a sense of what a big loss this is, Anderson, the United States' first military actions in 1799 were about freedom of navigation, the so-called quasi-war with France, then the war with the Barbary pirates. That was all about freedom of navigation. Since then, the United States has fought for and tried to maintain the principle of freedom of navigation. As the global superpower, that has been an absolute, we had in 1979, the legislation passed, the freedom of navigation program. That is what is being given up here. The idea that Iran can control one of the key choke points of the world economy, flies in the face of the whole basic responsibility the U.S. had. And as you say, this was not an issue. For 47 years of tension with the U.S. and Iran, Iran never closed the Strait of Hormuz. So the United States and Israel have somehow handed Iran a weapon at the end of this that they never had. And as you said, the nuclear program is not even in the 10 points.
So if Iran remains building a nuclear program or the capabilities to have a nuclear device and then gets control of the Strait of Hormuz, they would end up in a better situation than they were before this.
Right. So they have then the nuclear stockpile which they have this maritime position of power. But remember, they're also proposing Iran's parliament has passed legislation to this effect to charge $2 million per ship. So the number of ships that normally cross the Strait of Hormuz is about 100. You do the math, and JP Morgan has done the math, that is $90 billion of additional revenue for Iran, on top of about 50 to 60 billion in oil revenues.
It's a lot of ballistic missiles.
All of a sudden, Iran is, after Saudi Arabia, the richest country in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so you've taken an Iran that was weak, contained, its nuclear program shattered, and you've given it control of the strait, enormous new revenue flows, and the nuclear stockpile. Yeah. It's a very strange outcome.
I'm sure Kritzween will agree that concerns remain on both Israeli and the American side as well. The biggest question being, will the ceasefire hold or not? But that's all we have for you in this broadcast. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates continue on the other side.
National ambitions, regional pride, high-stakes alliances, and leaders battling for every vote. CNN News 18 brings you the ultimate election battleground. Battle for the states. The road to power begins here.
There has been peace that's been called. There are traffic on the streets, cars jammed on the streets. There is celebration, but to a certain extent, many would want to look at it with a pinch of salt. That while there will be thousands and perhaps millions who would come out and say this war ends, this also signal perhaps a certain messaging that will go across to this current regime. There was a big uprising in January, viewers. Will those people now have the courage to come back on the streets with perhaps the confidence that they're not going to be shot point blank? So these are questions which will remain. What will happen over the course of the next 60 to 90 days if this ceasefire holds? If there is a cessation of hostilities from both sides, will there be a transition within Persia itself? The transition from the Republic of Iran to what was erstwhile Persia. These are all questions that remain. There are people who are standing here, they're standing with the flags, but do you see in the body language the kind of jubilation that was expected or celebration that was expected? So that's the reason why there is a little bit of hesitance in trying to say, are these celebrations forced, muted? There is no revelry. People are out on the streets. They are saying, thank God there is peace. But is this actually a victory celebration? That is something. Yes, there will be a group among the Persian public who will be supporting the regime, who will be happy about this, and who would claim that Iran has won and this regime has won. But the questions are, where is Mr. Mujtaba Khamenei? Why is he being AWOL all this while? Is there going to be a regime change or perhaps a different leader going forward? How much of information has Iran actually withheld? What are the losses that the regime has suffered, and at what cost will they be able to stand up again? Many questions, and we'll try and address all of that with our guests in a bit. But first, we've got news coming through. First on this celebrations. Akash, if you look at it, there are people there, but the flags are not being waved with the kind of zest or fervor that one would have expected. They seem to have all come out, or have they been exhorted to come out? These are all questions. There's a lot that can be read from pictures. And we've also got, Akash, are you there with us? All right, we'll go across to Akash in a bit. We've got more news coming through. The 2-week ceasefire plan, more news coming through. The 2-week ceasefire plans, there has been peace that's been called. There are traffic on the streets, cars jammed on the streets. There is celebration, but to a certain extent, many would want to look at it with a pinch of salt, that while there will be thousands and perhaps millions who would come out and say this war ends, this also signal perhaps a certain messaging that will go across to this current regime. There was a big uprising in January, viewers. Will those people now have the courage to come back on the streets with perhaps the confidence that they're not going to be shot point blank? Well, these are questions which will remain. What will happen over the course of the next 60 to 90 days if 60 to 90 days if this ceasefire holds, if there is a cessation of hostilities from both sides?
Welcome and thank you so much for staying with CNN News 18. We here talking about the ceasefire that has been arranged by Donald Trump's assertion with Pakistan's mediation. Having had conversations with the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir, he says he's decided to hold off that bombing against Iran. But how true is this mediation? Was it the Pakistan Prime Minister calling the shots, or was it Donald Trump himself? That's the big question that we here are out to dissect. I'm Griha Atul. With me in the studios, Prithveen Walia. Prithveen, what do you think of this assertion?
Oh yes, absolutely. And on the sidelines, let's not forget the conversation that's been ongoing. It's taken the internet by storm, and we're going to give you a little glimpse of what really is happening on social media, because while we see a confirmation coming from President Donald Trump on the 2-week ceasefire, we also saw a parallel confirmation coming from Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. But he seems to have embarrassed himself yet again. He's unintentionally spotlighted the behind-the-scenes nature of the diplomatic push for a temporary Iran ceasefire. In fact, an early version of his social media post supporting extension of Trump's deadlines and also urging a ceasefire was briefly published with a visible draft. So this was one of the edit posts that quickly surfaced on social media. It read draft, and this one draft word, this label, has exposed that the message may actually have been written or heavily guided by others, possibly someone from the US or the top US officials, before it was posted and then later edited. So that has really been the biggest conversation on the sidelines of this intense back and forth between Tehran and Washington, and whether or not the ceasefire will hold, of the indications that have come in so far. Speaking of which, Indian politicians also now quickly reacting to the story.
Absolutely, and that's the piece of breaking news that we have for our viewers. Let's take a look at that. Kanchan Gupta, senior advisor in the INB ministry, has now reiterated the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's remark that Pakistan is a dalal state, a country that has survived through dalali within quotes, or acting as an intermediary for others to sustain himself. Gupta has also said that no prime minister of any self-respecting nation would issue a public statement, especially on social media platform X, that appears to have been drafted elsewhere. And this is what he has in fact suggested. So more and more criticisms that are coming in as far as this faux pas that the Pakistan Premier seems to have done on social media platform X. And this is what Kanchan Gupta also seems to be reiterating, as he's mentioned what has the External Affairs Minister really said about Pakistan really claiming that it is mediating the ceasefire between US and Iran. Taking this across to my guests on the broadcast, joining us this morning, Colonel Rohit Dev is with us. Colonel Dev, of course, this is absolute mockery that Pakistan seems to have, made of itself in this situation. That entire draft post, and then not deleting the draft post, going on to edit it. Of course, the internet is in splits.
So let me put it into perspective. It's not the mockery of Pakistan. Pakistan has been a joke all across as a pariah state, as a terrorist state, and a state up for sale, so you can get anything done for money from them. That's a given. But the moot point is, when you go back to the history of this edited tweet, you finally lose touch unless you see a community note. So that means the original tweet itself, where this has been written as draft, has been deleted. The draft came from the White House. The draft was not emanating from Pakistan, because it very clearly says Pakistan's PM's message. So it was a coordinated draft from the White House, which has been put as a copy paste a little unceremoniously by Sabah Sharif's Twitter handler. That's all. But the problem is, the United States of America, which had held so much of gravitas in the global geopolitics only a few years back, has today actually reduced itself to be a sort of a messenger of not peace, but threats, and amounting and tantamounting and hinging around terrorism. That is the problem which United States has created for itself. If you see the count, they have lost more US generals than Iran has lost. And yes, Iranian generals are dead, but the US generals have been shunted out from service. If you see the friends and allies they have lost, while Iran may have made a few because of its gestures towards the energy crisis and helping people, the United States has lost. The aura itself of the United States will take a long time to rebuild trust with the global community. Just imagine the fiasco. The United States president is quoting in a tweet that he was helped through a telephonic conversation with Pakistani emissaries. Rather than listening to NATO, rather than listening to France, UK, Australia, and other civilized world, the problem with this off-ramp is that this off-ramp is not sustainable, because it comes at a price where the US might has been pleaded. The entire charade to create a perception is also gone a little kaput, because it is the Iranians today who are celebrating on the streets, and it were the Americans yesterday who were calling for Trump's ouster because of that tweet or the truth social media post he made. Also, I know a certain is that you're saying something, please.
Sorry, Colonel Rohit Dev, sorry for that interruption. We'll come back to you in just a few seconds. I do want to take this across to the newsroom. Anand Narasimhan is joining us here. Pakistan being reduced to a WhatsApp forward of diplomacy is the buzz really on internet. And remember the kind of posturing Pakistan was attempting, Anand. So it becomes very interesting in the larger scheme of things, with the Pakistan Prime Minister completely exposed with this draft message.
True, and also Kanchan Gupta taking a pot shot, saying that External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was right in calling Pakistan a dalal nation, because they are pimping out to put food on their plate. That's the kind of language that's been used. And I'm quoting Mr. Kanchan Gupta, who's come out and said that a state given to Dalali Aka pimping out to put food on its plate. No PM of a half-decent country would put out a public statement, a post on X, whose draft clearly came from someplace else. And that was because, viewers, that draft said Pakistan's PM message on X. So there was an error there also, which was pointed out by some of our guests. How would you do that if you have allowed the Prime Minister's X post handle to be given to somebody else to cut paste and cut copy paste? So this Control C, Control D, Control V, all of that has only got Control E for, that is embarrassment for the Pakistanis, and that's clearly being highlighted at this point. And there's one after the other. It's missteps by the Pakistan leadership, be it Asim Munir or be it Shehbaz Sharif. Every time they try and project Pakistan as playing an important role in the region, they shoot themselves in the foot and expose themselves all the more that they are nothing but doormats or messengers which are being used by those to whom they are subservient to. China on the one hand, and here US Israel on the other, because Pakistan is a nation which was caught in the bind because it was trying to express solidarity with Iran while it had a security arrangement with the Saudi Arabian, and Saudi Arabia was very, very upset. The language they used against the UAE, also one of its leaders, has also not done it any favor in that particular region, and everybody will remember. They don't forget so easily the utterances. But this act itself shows that Pakistan has not only outsourced its diplomacy to somebody else, it's outsourcing even basic posts of the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
No mind of its own is really the message that's come out, and that's what critics are pointing to. Thank you so much, Anand, for that. Let's give you an idea of how the internet is responding. Those are the messages that have been coming in on social media since the last few hours. So we'll try and pull out some of those messages for you. This is an American journalist, Ryan Grimm, who's taken to social media, and look at this, he's actually quoted this edited post. So you see at the bottom of the screens, there is that word draft, that phrase draft, Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. Now he says this is unbelievable. The edit history on this tweet shows that Pakistan Prime Minister originally copy pasted everything he was said, including this remember phrase, viewers, is really the biggest talking point as far as the story is concerned. Draft Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. The question being asked by netizens is, why is it that if this was being posted by the Prime Minister's official handle, would it say Pakistan's Prime Minister? And the other, of course, the key word being cited is the word draft. So this is the edit post. We'll try and go back and pull out a couple of others. This is, of course, the meme fest as it turns out to be. Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X, the translated version, Dalal, as we were just discussing, with something which is something that India has also highlighted or rather criticized in the past. All right, there's another meme there that you see, possibly AI generated meme, explanation of Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's draft tweet, and you see how the internet is really cracking on this one as well. We'll go over to more. There's another interesting comment that's coming from Mahesh Jethmalani. He again says Pakistan's Prime Minister didn't just post on X, he accidentally posted the instructions too. And you see this one grab here, viewers, the edit post is now being reposted heavily, and then Pakistan is being trolled. This could really have been a big diplomatic success, but this is how it played out eventually for Pakistan. He's of course gone on to say how this may be the most honest thing to ever come out of that office. At least now the world knows even Pakistan's diplomacy is copy-pasted, outsourced and uploaded without proofreading. So a mere WhatsApp forward is the sentiment on the internet, and that's exactly why we're seeing heavy trolling take place on the same. Again, you have another meme that's been pulled out, Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X. So that one phrase really repeating itself in all of these memes that you find on social media. We'll try and play out a few others as well. Again, on Taco Tuesday, this says Donald Trump sent Shahbaz Sharif a draft message to send back asking Trump for a ceasefire. So the message certainly has gone out there to the world, and that's exactly why this has become such a huge joke on the internet. It really has stolen also the attention away from the very serious conversation around the 2-week ceasefire and whether or not this was possibly just a dictated version which was forwarded by Pakistan. And that's really the role, the limited role that Pakistan played in mediation talks. There again, you have another media post, embarrassing moment for Pakistan Prime Minister Sharif. He copy-pasted the message on X but forgot to remove the line. So this one line, this one phrase, which was a blunder, has been picked on by netizens. They're all now quoting this one edited post in trolling the Pakistan leadership, including Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. Edit history reveals the blunder, raising serious questions on leadership and basic communication competence. There's more that's lined up, so we'll quickly take you through this. This is another social media user, again resorting to that same phrase. Yes, Shahbaz Sharif just copy-pasted it straight. The staff would say Prime Minister, but apparently the US and Israel insist on Pakistan Prime Minister. So why is it that his own office would say Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif on something that was supposed to be posted on his official handle? People calling it hilarious, and this really has become the subject of the biggest joke amidst all these serious conversations around whether or not this 2-week ceasefire will hold. We head into a very quick break on that note. Lots more lined up when we return. We'll be right back.
There has been peace that's been called. There are traffic on the streets, cars jammed on the streets. There is celebration, but to a certain extent, many would want to look at it with a pinch of salt. That while there will be thousands and perhaps millions who would come out and say this war ends, this also signal perhaps a certain messaging that will go across to this current regime. There was a big uprising in January, viewers. Will those people now have the courage to come back on the streets with perhaps the confidence that they're not going to be shot point blank? So these are questions which will remain. What will happen over the course of the next 60 to 90 days if 60 to 90 days if this ceasefire holds, if there is a cessation of hostilities from both sides? Will there be a transition within Persia itself? The transition from the Republic of Iran to what was erstwhile Persia. These are all questions that remain. There are people who are standing here, they're standing with the flags, but do you see in the body language?
So,
no, it was just copy-pasted.
Yeah,
so
copy-pasted, that's right.
technically it was copy-pasted.
Yeah.
Somebody had said, and they had said draft Pak PM. This is what it is. This is Forbes' story. Tara Karta and Ambassador Ashok Sajanar. Pakistan's plea to Trump draft exposed looks scripted by someone else. Have a look at this. Forbes says, this is the top line, a message from Pakistani Prime Minister requesting that Donald Trump delayed threats to wipe out Iran faced extra scrutiny when social media sleuths showed an early draft of his plea appeared written by an entity outside of Pakistan. Because it says, this is what it said. It said, draft Pak PM's message on X. Now Ryan Grimm, he is the founder of Dropsite Substack, suggested this message was likely not written by Sharif, noting his own staff would not refer to him as Pakistan PM, and that the post could have been written either by the US or by Israel. It could have been even written by somebody else, we don't know. Other users questioned why the initial post indicated it was a draft and referred to Prime Minister in English, suggesting the message was not written by Pakistani officials. Sharif's office did not respond to a request for a comment from Forbes, but they have this is no longer there on X, but they have got a screenshot, a grab. This is what is important. Look at this. Draft Pakistan PM's message on X. This is posted on the Twitter handle of the Prime Minister. So clearly this has come from somewhere, or have they used an app or a tool? This clearly will not be Grok or Chat GPT for sure, Tara Karta.
See, at one level, the Pakistanis are pretty desperate because the attack on Jubail in Saudi Arabia, you had the Prime Minister assuring the Saudis that we will do everything we can to support you. They don't want to go into that mutual defense agreement at all. They don't want to go down that path. So that is one. Number two, what I heard yesterday was that Munir has been working the telephone.
Yeah.
Number three is that Munir himself is nothing in this conflict. It is obviously he is relaying through to someone else. There's Turkey involved, there's China involved, there's a bunch of people, and he's a kind of a go-between for all that talk. So this is extremely interesting. I mean, I really like. So I think with this, you're very clear that the actual messaging, actual negotiations are going on elsewhere. It's literally a kind of what shall I say? I don't know.
They're not even the poster, the post. They're not the post people, or they're not the messengers also, because their messages are also being drafted by somebody else. Also, Ambassador Ashok Sajanar, Trump actually called Munir. That's what reports say. They didn't call Shehbaz Sharif. So, what are the Pakistanis doing? This is one PR nightmare after the other, even if they're trying to an image correction. So the more they try and correct their image, the more it gets distorted. That's what it looks like. This is the word. See, look at this. There's an there's an asterisk here, and it says draft, and it says Pakistan PM's message on X. So somebody has actually drafted this and sent it across, saying, and somebody who has control of Shehbaz Sharif's Twitter handle or X handle, or Shehbaz Sharif himself, has just copied and pasted.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Anand. You're very right. I think he has been, Shehbaz Sharif is just the cat's paw for the United States. We've known it all along. I don't think he has any, or Pakistan has any independent agency for that matter. They're just trying to collect some brownie points as a result of that. Meaning even as far as the drafting of this message is concerned, it should really read, even the English is wrong, it should really read Pakistan PM's message, not Pakistan.
Welcome back. You're watching CNN News 18. We are now getting a CNN News 18 mega exclusive as learning of celebrations that have erupted in Tehran after the announcement of the US-Iran ceasefire. Iranians in the capital city of Tehran, we're told, celebrated Iran's victory in the American-Israel-imposed war. This is a version that's coming in from Iran, remember, and this is following the announcement by both sides. First by the US President Donald Trump of a 2-week ceasefire, mediated by Pakistan, he says, and then Pakistan also doing that entire faux pas on social media. But Iranians seem to be celebrating. They are very happy that at least this 2 weeks truce has been arranged and arrived at. So then what do you make of this?
Well, that's right. It's definitely an occasion for Iranians to celebrate because till yesterday they were forming human chain around the critical energy infrastructure, critical supply infrastructure, so on and so forth. There were multiple visuals, in fact, of footages coming from Iran where they were forming human chain to protect their important infrastructure. And today the ceasefire has been announced not only by the United States but Iran, and in fact now Iran is pushing its 10-point agenda, 10 points peace plan, and Iran says that this 10-point peace plan is the basis for discussion with the United States, and United States accepts this plan, calling it workable. And this includes all those things which Iran has been saying from last 1 month. Enrichment, sovereignty over Hormuz, withdrawal of US forces from the region, so on and so forth. So whatever they have been saying from day one, all those things have been mentioned in this plan. This plan has been accepted by the United States.
But which begs the question, Siddhant, what was the objective of this entire war? On the 40th day, there is an announcement of a ceasefire, and then Trump says it is workable, but not really out there, not really good enough. How do you see this? I mean, another fickle statement that has come from the US president, but talking about an absolute control of the Strait of Hormuz, even that fee, that levy of $2 million to allow the passage of vessels, which they are going to, in fact, split between them and Oman. How does one read these developments?
That is exactly what Trump's critics are also saying, that what have you achieved by launching war against Iran, because you are accepting the fact that there's going to be enrichment program continue in Iran. You are accepting that Hormuz will be controlled by Iran. President Trump, in fact, tried diluting this entire Hormuz issue by saying that we are going to build up traffic at Hormuz, perhaps hinting that it's going to be US allies and Iran controlling the Hormuz in future, so on and so forth. So basically he was trying to dilute. Then you have also agreed the withdrawal of the US forces, Iran will not be attacked. So what have you achieved? In terms of substance, like there is no as such achievement of the US forces. On the other hand, the Hormuz, which was the international waters before this conflict, perhaps is now being controlled by Iran.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that perspective. We'll continue to track every development which is to do with this 2-week ceasefire. Let's see which way is this headed. Right now we are heading into a very short break.
Right. So, no, it was just copy-pasted.
Yeah, copy-pasted.
Technically, it was copy-pasted. Somebody had said, and they had said, draft Pak PM. This is what it is. This is Forbes' story. And Tara Karta and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar. Pakistan's plea to Trump draft exposed looks scripted by someone else. Have a look at this. Forbes says, this is the top line. A message from Pakistani Prime Minister requesting that Donald Trump delay threats to wipe out Iran faced extra scrutiny when social media sleuths showed an early draft of his plea appeared written by an entity outside of Pakistan. Because it says, this is what it said. It said, draft Pak PM's message on X. Now Ryan Grimm, he is the founder of Dropsite Substack, suggested this message was likely not written by Sharif, noting his own staff would not refer to him as Pakistan PM, and that the post could have been written either by the US or by Israel. It could have been even written by somebody else, we don't know. Other users questioned why the initial post indicated it was a draft and referred to Prime Minister in English, suggesting the message was not written by Pakistani officials. Sharif's office did not respond to a request for a comment from Forbes, but they have this. This is no longer there on X, but they have got a screenshot, a grab. This is what is important. Look at this. draft Pakistan PM's message on X. This is posted on the Twitter handle of the Prime Minister. So clearly this has come from somewhere, or have they used an app or a tool? This clearly will not be Grok or Chat GPT for sure, Tara Karta.
At one level, the Pakistanis are pretty desperate because the attack on Jubail in Saudi Arabia, you had the Prime Minister assuring the Saudis that we will do everything we can to support you. They don't want to go into that mutual defense agreement at all. They don't want to go down that path. So that is one. Number two, what I heard yesterday was that Munir has been working the telephone.
Yeah.
Number three is that Munir himself is nothing in this conflict. It is obviously he is relaying through to someone else. There's Turkey involved, there's China involved, there's a bunch of people, and he's a kind of a go-between for all that talk. So this is extremely interesting. I mean, I really like. So I think with this, you're very clear that the actual messaging, actual negotiations are going on elsewhere. It's literally a kind of what shall I say? I don't know.
They're not even the poster, the post. They're not the post people, or they're not the messengers also, because their messages are also being drafted by somebody else. Also, Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, Trump actually called Munir. That's what reports say. They didn't call Shehbaz Sharif. So what are the Pakistanis doing? This is one PR nightmare after the other, even if they're trying to an image correction. So the more they try and correct their image, the more it gets distorted. That's what it looks like. This is the word. See, look at this. There's an asterisk here, and it says draft, and it says Pakistan PM's message on X. So somebody has actually drafted this and sent it across saying, and somebody who has control of Shehbaz Sharif's Twitter handle or X handle, or Shehbaz Sharif himself, has just copied.
What a day it's been, viewers. We've been up since 4 in the morning bringing you this developing story. There is a halt in the conflict in the Gulf. But here are the headlines at 11 in the morning. After warning civilizational end, Iran and United States reach a conditional ceasefire for 2 weeks. Strait of Hormuz to open up. Formalization soon. Iran sets 10 conditions for ending the conflict, claims US has agreed on lifting of sanctions against Iran, no attacks on axis of resistance. Iran claims they reserve control over Hormuz to levy fee with Oman to ensure safe passage of ships. Trump says US will help with traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz. There's disquiet in Israel over the Iran-United States ceasefire. Reports claim Trump dialed Netanyahu to inform him of successful negotiations, but the opposition against Netanyahu asks why Israel was not even on the table. Asian markets trade in green on the back of ceasefire announcement. Sensex surges to 2,600 points. Nifty jumped 750 as oil prices slumped below $100 a barrel. The Republicans hail peacemaker Trump, but Democrats skeptical slam loss of face for Trump in the United States. Chorus for his removal continues as Americans pay price of the war. And Pak Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif boasts of mediation in the Iran-US conflict, but technology exposes him. Sharif's Twitter post drafted by US leaves Pakistan red-faced. Pak plays host to Iran-US talks to finalize conditional truce. Tehran confirms meet in Islamabad 15-day timeline for permanent solution. Conditional ceasefire reached. Focus now on in-person talks. Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff to hold talks with Iran in Pakistan this Friday. Pakistan gloats, but is China the real mediator? Trump says he believes China was involved in pushing Iran to the negotiating table. Viewers, there have been fast-paced developments in the Gulf. Hours after the deadline imposed by Donald Trump, and viewers, hours after his "we will end civilization" threat, just before the deadline was to expire, the United States and Iran have agreed to pause hostilities for 15 days. Those 15 days, viewers, have been set aside for negotiations. Both sides are seeing this as a victory for their respective stands. Of course, viewers, the facts on the ground, as always, will be open to debate. On the face of it, the United States, while threatening Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, has accepted a middle approach. Strait of Hormuz will open, but Iran will get to levy, viewers, a cess on all traffic that is passing through. And also, viewers, it will be imposing the conditions, i.e. being the policeman, literally, for ships going in and out, and will be free to, in fact, veto any movement. Oman is also going to get to basically apply a cess, viewers, on any traffic passing through the Strait of Hormuz. This is because both these nations, it has been deemed, need to rebuild their economies and therefore need some cash. But viewers, net is that Donald Trump has very little to show for his 40-day war. There has been a $40 billion erosion of US taxpayer wealth. There has been a further depletion of US missile arsenal. There has been also, viewers, extensive damage to US bases in the Gulf. But now, viewers, this 2-week pause, ceasefire with Iran, leaves the Iranian regime intact, and it also allows Iran to exercise some amount of control over the Strait of Hormuz. This is a complete shift, a paradigm shift in the way and over the last few years the Strait has functioned. All these decisions have followed direct appeals from Pakistan, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir, who urged Washington to hold back planned strikes to allow for diplomacy to succeed. But viewers, Pakistan's role, while it likes to inject itself as a mediator, may not quite amount to that. We will look at that, of course, in just a few moments, but there has been an untimely and unseemly leak that has embarrassed Pakistan. Shehbaz Sharif's tweet was the dead giveaway. In his tweet, the first line reads, "Draft from Pakistan Prime Minister." Now, viewers, there it is, draft Pakistan PM's message on X. No Pakistani Prime Minister would be referring to himself and sending himself a draft of what he is supposed to have written. Number two, even if, viewers, it has been drafted by an aide for Pakistan's Prime Minister to see, a Pakistani aide would not have said Pakistan's Prime Minister. He or she would have just simply said, for Prime Minister to see, or PM's message on X. The very fact that these words have been used, viewers, suggests that someone else behind the scenes has drafted this entire tweet or this X post and left it for Shehbaz Sharif or those who manage his Twitter handle or his X handle to post. Now, viewers, this suggests, as has been believed and widely commented, that Pakistan was nothing more than a forwarding office, really, of Washington, D.C. and of Donald Trump. That it was not playing a mediatory role. It was playing the role of a broker, or as Dr. Jaishankar, the EM, said, a dalal. Viewers, of course, That is the sidebar story. The main story, viewers, is the very fact that negotiations have begun, and they have begun in earnest, and they will devolve upon now the two teams on either side, one led by Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and we're told Vice President Vance, and whoever the Iranians nominate to represent their cause. This is, of course, a massive development, a massive day in the Gulf, and also for world peace. It will also, of course, help in stabilizing energy supplies across the globe, even though it will not lead to a full restoration of supplies. But viewers, what I can tell you is, when we can put up those hot boards, as we call them in TV parlance, which will show you the Sensex and will show you the Nifty and track other indices, and viewers, they are all today trading in the green because this has lifted sentiments. Even the RBI has come out and at this moment not tampered with the repo rate, which is a nod to the fact that the fundamentals of the economy are strong and that there is no extra stimulus needed to boost investment. But yes, viewers, the RBI has said that the economic hardships that have been endured over the last 40 days will have a cooling effect on GDP. Perhaps GDP will come down by a few basis points, but not significantly. Donald Trump, viewers, has come out and said the pause in the military action is conditional, subject to Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz for safe and immediate passage. Tehran has agreed to the ceasefire, but with a clear warning, this is not the end of the war. Iran says any violation will trigger a sharp response. For now, there's a tense pause, even though there are reports that are coming in which seem to suggest, viewers, that at the end of the day, hostilities are still raging in some theaters. For example, there have been a flurry of missiles that have left the Iranian airspace and have been directed towards Israel and vice versa. So those are happening. But viewers, let me give you now the big overview, the big takeaways on the back of this tenuous peace. This is a tenuous peace, but what does it actually mean, viewers? That high-stakes brinkmanship as a diplomatic tool by Trump sets a very dangerous precedent. What it does is, viewers, it brings in that nuclear threat as a bargain. Remember, nuclear weapons by policy were only for deterrence. Today, of course, viewers, that has changed. Let's look at the next important takeaway. Yes, the US has agreed to a ceasefire on Iran's 10-point terms, also accepts the veto over ship passage to the Strait of Hormuz. So this really is a bit of a climb down, viewers. Let's look at the next takeaway, and there are quite a few of these. The Hormuz remains the heart of the deal. The strait is reopening, but it will be Iran that will determine whether the ceasefire holds or collapses, depending on the response, viewers, to some of its terms. And of course, viewers, the Hormuz will hold the key. If Iran doesn't come to the party and allow ships to go under any conditionality, we are back to square one. This is a tactical pause, not peace, which is absolutely easy to infer because it's a 2-week window, pressure valve for negotiations, not a resolution. Let's look at the fifth takeaway, which is very, very important, viewers. This is a big question. Yes, US has paused operations, but uncertainty over how fully Iran will comply. Will the Iranians use this also, viewers, to regroup? Have they signaled tactically a retreat but are actually positioning themselves for an offensive? Will this also be used this period by Israel and the United States and perhaps even some of their Gulf partners to shore up their defenses? We don't know. This war isn't over, it's paused. Israel's endgame dilemma, already domestic pressure is beginning to weigh on Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yair Lapid has come out, who's the opposition leader, and has accused Netanyahu of a sellout, saying it's remarkable that Israel, whose principal security is at stake in this war, was not even at the negotiating table when decisions were taken. So it remains to be seen. As of now, Tel Aviv has been remarkably and ominously quiet. We'll have to see substantively how invested they are in this US-Iran peace effort. Pakistan's moment, where Pakistan will like to position itself as the fulcrum, the pivot around which global diplomacy is revolving, but an embarrassing gaffe by Shehbaz Sharif has exposed its centrality and its claims over its centrality, in fact, in negotiating this settlement. Was it just a forwarding office, really, for President Trump, an ashtray, so to speak? And the oil impact, prices are softening, but not to pre-war levels as production infra needs repairs. So yes, there's been a cooling of oil prices, but are they to the place where they were before the war began? No, they're not in the low 70s, viewers. Oil is still trading at around $90 a barrel. It's oscillating between the late 80s and the 90s. We are going to go across to Siddhant for more on this story as this envelops viewers, the world now, as the world wakes up, specifically viewers in the Mid-East and of course in Europe. Let's bring in Siddhant. Siddhant, lots happening. I believe that Yair Lapid, who is the opposition leader in Israel, has questioned Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's try and pull out that tweet and put it out here. But we are hearing that it's not going too well as far as Israel is concerned, or at least the government there is concerned, selling this deal, selling their quiescent agreement on this deal.
Well, that's right, Rahul. So there is a silence on the part of Israelis. In fact, that's the
this
post.
Is the Shehbaz Sharif one, of course. This is the rather strange one. We've come to that in just a few moments.
Copy-paste diplomacy.
Yes, copy-paste diplomacy.
But yeah, so Rahul, I was pointing out that that there has not been statements coming from the Israeli leadership since the announcement of the ceasefire. Maybe one or two statements which we are aware of. Their objectives, as far as Lebanon side is concerned, perhaps is still yet to be achieved. They want to create a buffer zone, expanded buffer zone, as a guarantee for Israel's security. There is ground invasion being reported, and even the Israeli forces are present there. Millions of people have got displaced. So that objective is perhaps paramount importance for Israel at this point in time. Also, it's President Trump who is White House is telling the journalist in the United States that President Trump spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu before announcing the ceasefire. So let's wait for Israel's perhaps view on this entire ceasefire being announced between United States and Iran, because there's a lot of point of contention, Rahul. Which,
viewers, what we're going to be doing over the next 1 hour is going to all our principal reporters, analysts, and correspondents who are going to be bringing in points of view. With Akanksha, I'm going to bring in the diplomacy angle, the winners and the gainers. With Shivani Gupta, we'll talk a little bit about the US response, what's happening politically in the United States. She will be bringing us those inputs. And with Akash, we're going to really look at the situation on the ground, the depletion of US stockpiles, where Iran stands, how badly hit it is, and of course, the role of the proxies. So we'll discuss all these angles. Of course, there is also the big Pakistani angle that the director here wants us to get onto, because it's actually the most salacious part of this story, but we'll come to that, viewers. I want to bring in Akanksha in just a few seconds. Viewers, we're going to look at the big gainers and the big losers. Thanks, Siddhant. I'm just going to look at the big gainers and the big losers in this conflict, or let's say those who actually haven't gained, where there's been zero gain. So here we are, viewers. Iran, a gainer. Survival for it is now a strategic win. So the IRGC remains in place in Iran. There has been no regime change. It's quite possible that even more hardline elements have now come to rule Iran, and their grip is firmer and their position is rock solid. So Iran retains leverage over the Strait of Hormuz, which is unanticipated. Russia, energy gains, US distracted globally. It's minting money once again, viewers. Remember, this was not supposed to happen. Putin was supposed to be starved of resources, so he cannot no longer wage an expensive war in Ukraine, but here he's making money and he's selling oil at boosted prices. So this has been a net gain for Russia. Let's look at China. Again, its strategic space potentially expands, viewers, because US credibility is down. The US is bogged down, it's distracted. Could it open another front? We don't know, viewers, but fundamentally that's an issue. And Akansha, let's talk a little bit about these instances and all these scenarios that are building. Akanksha joins me. Pakistan diplomatic profile is up. A bridge to the ceasefire. Of course, this is all very debatable, isn't it? This Pakistan angle is debated.
Absolutely. We'll only know on Friday if we do see the Americans, whether it is the Middle Eastern envoy Steve Witkoff or say the US Vice President J.D. Vance, because more importantly, Iranians have been wary of Pakistan given the security pact they have with Saudi.
Let's
but
look
they
at
have
it
played a
objectively.
role.
They have been a facilitator.
Absolutely.
But whether they have been a mediator, as they want to position themselves as the fulcrum and the pivot around which diplomacy is sort of revolving, I think that is very, very tall.
Go by the last 60 years. The history itself has been so dubious. They have a checkered past when it comes to mediation, whether it was China and the United States. And now let's see how far they can go. They've been relaying messages. There's no doubt about that. But very important points you touched upon, Rahul, which included the role that US has played in sort of giving an upper hand to all of these countries. China is already looking towards now trading in yuan. They have already challenged the dollar. Russia, it's made a mockery of US sanctions.
So, let's quickly go through some of these. We'll also bring in Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat. We're also going to talk to you a little bit about that post. I'm really excited about that Shehbaz Sharif
you should take it forward.
bloomer. But hang on, just stay with me. There's UAE, trade and infrastructure risk. So these are those who have lost more than they have gained, viewers. Allied with the United States, saw a lot of their gains, their financial gains erode as businesses flew out. And again, the United States, militarily dominant, no doubt about this, but no decisive end. No objectives have been attained. As I said, the IRGC is in place, they remain a threat. And of course, let's keep me in the frame. Let's also look at the one other major fact, which is that the Strait of Hormuz, viewers, remains under quasi-Iranian control. In fact, in a complete break from international law, Akanksha, you have the Iranians now going to be imposing cess through a route which is a natural one.
Now it's being
a natural
endorsed by
geography.
the US President himself,
Can
Rahul.
you believe it?
It's a big victory for them.
Can you believe it, viewers? So they entered into a war with America and we will all be paying for their reconstruction. I mean, this is completely inexplicable. Israel, tactical gains, yes, massive, because Iran is depleted. It is weak. I don't know if the Iranians will ever want to strike Israel again for the next 5, 7, 8 years. But who knows, viewers, because again, incomplete outcome. What would they have wanted? They would have wanted those enriched uranium stockpiles in their pocket. But Iran gets to keep them, which means over a period of time they can redevelop their capabilities and refit their missiles, and this time give them a nuclear edge. So Israel is one of those who's lost more than it has gained, viewers, and that's unfortunate. Let's have a look at Saudi Arabia next, and this is very, very interesting, viewers, because it's weakened by Iran. Yes, Iran has definitely become weaker in proportion to Saudi Arabia, but Iran has also weakened Saudi Arabia a little bit. And there's a security risk which remains, because any day the Iranians could send across drones or other projectiles and constantly irritate, even through proxy militia, Saudi Arabia and perhaps others who are sympathetic to its cause, specifically because it's a Muslim country. Nonetheless, viewers,
and Saudi also widens the overall ambit because of Pakistani involvement and the defense pact.
Absolutely. And let's have a look at the next one, which is very, very important. We're talking about Qatar and Oman. Weakened by Iran's security risks remain. They have been the net losers. One of them, in fact, was a friend of the Iranians, but in this particular war has lost credibility with both DC as well as Tehran.
But Rahul, don't you think that Oman also stands to gain if indeed the toll is split between Oman and Iran?
The only reason I'm sort of not second guessing that right now is because the UNCLOS outlaws any nation from applying cesses on natural passages.
That to international waters.
And that international waters. So this sets a very bad precedent. So will it be actually acceptable in law? We don't know. Is this just a give to Oman? Yes, possibly it could be. But let's see if that actually translates and who actually raises the first red flag in the international courts. So fundamentally, that's one of this entire thing. We'll be looking at the American picture. We'll also be looking at the defense picture, viewers, on militarily how these various players stand now with Akash and our guests. But I want to go across to Rajiv Dogra, who is with us. He's a former diplomat, very experienced analytic expert, Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey, who is also, of course, there's a security analyst with us, Needs Dakshan, Major General Bishambar Dayal, is a defense expert. So, Mr. Dogra, this has been a dramatic day of developments. We've all been up since 4 in the morning. We work to Trump time. I'm not even saying that we work to US time anymore. We work to Trump time. But fundamentally, the bigger picture is that the world will breathe a little easier for 15 days. What do you make of all of this?
Firstly, good morning to you, to Akansha and all your viewers and my fellow panelists. Your eyes show that you've been up since very early in the morning. And I think in a way it was worth it because the world was tense. We probably, the entire world thought that hell is going to break loose as Trump had warned. But fortunately, he stepped back for whatever reason. One of the reasons which General Pandey had mentioned earlier in a show on your channel was what happened in Isfahan, because that was a big blow to the American military, both to its assets as well as to its personnel. So I think Trump got a real shock about the size of losses that America had to suffer in that misadventure. So finally, some better sense seems to have prevailed because the army generals who had been against this war right from the beginning finally sort of brought home to him the message that this is not going to end very well for America. Now, as far as the other question which has been doing the rounds is why Israel is not on the table. Why is it not involved in the negotiations? For the simple fact that Iran does not recognize Israel, nor does Pakistan for that matter, so it has some back channel contacts. So Iran was not going to accept any messages coming directly or indirectly through Pakistan or any other source from Israel. So that is why it is basically between America and Iran via Pakistan, which is acting like a courier service, but I would give some more credit to Pakistan because I think it has also been trying diplomatically at least to try and tamper down the extreme position of the 15 points that America first had. Iran has also given a 10-point proposal, which America may have some issues with, but that is what diplomacy is about, and that is where the Friday talks will take place. As far as the world at large is concerned, including India, we were all affected by this 40-day war.
Yes.
And there was a lot of concern as to where it was going and whether economy, Indian economy and others will hurt and to what extent. Fortunately, for the moment, that pause has started and let's hope it continues. But Trump being Trump and Israel being the instigator, you never know whether the passage would be smooth. But we have to hope that talks somehow bring about a lasting peace.
Very, very interesting, viewers. Very, very interesting point of view there. General Pandey, how do you assess this? If you talk about winners, losers, gainers, etc., how do you assess this?
You know, very clearly what has happened is, Rahul, that the people who are totally lost in this game is the Gulf and the region, right? Because now after this, how much ever degradation Iran may have suffered, but there is one thing very clear, and please understand the religion part in this entire thing, the ideology part. They understand that asymmetry will always bring down a more powerful country. And the stalemate or defeat, both ways, even as a stalemate, is a great, great victory for Iran. It's an ideological victory. The challenge for Gulf is not about terms of winning or losing in anything. It is monarchy versus the people. And throughout the war, the people of Gulf were with Iran, and all Muslims around the world were with Iran. Very few were not with Iran. And this widens that gap. The ideological gap, alliances will shift. Monarchies are going to be in some degree of trouble, and I think Ambassador Dogra will have much more better view on it. So this is a huge damage. The second is the credibility of Americans, that without taking into consideration of the alliances, in last 1 year, Europe has been sidelined and left aloof, allowed. What they have done to Venezuela and people on the south have been left on one side. In this conflict, the Gulf has suffered the maximum, but truly their considerations have not been taken into account when they have gone for the ceasefire. But I will not like to believe. Yesterday I had tweeted and I had already said that ceasefire will happen in 12 hours. But the game is in play because you cannot trust what is happening in the back channel. And I firmly believe that there is some discussion which is happening which Pakistanis don't know, which nobody knows, in terms of breaking the regime, taking over charge of Iran, because that will be the only gameplay. And 10 days were taken to allow that talk to happen. There are under 10 days, 14 days being done for this. And mark my word, maybe a day before or 2 days before or any time in between, there will be a very, very considerable strike, because when the final ceasefire will happen or truce will happen, the previous 12 hours to 24 hours are going to be very, very violent from both sides. That has not yet happened. I thought when the Kharg Island got struck, maybe something much more will happen, but it's going to be there. The last point I just want to mind up here is that Israel will continue to go on its path. For Israel, it is essential. We may not like what Israel is doing and world may not like, but the fact is that till the time the proxies remain in the proximity of Iran, of Israel, and Hezbollah remains alive in Lebanon, I think even if 2 million Palestinians have to be moved out, this strike will continue, and this is one part which will never be accepted by Israel. And of course, US and Israel have gone into this conflict with two different political objectives. Their political objectives and aims were totally different. Yes, the targets remain same, right? So there is a difference between targeting, but political and military objectives being different is the thing which I am stating. And most of the military objectives are yet to be achieved in case of Israel. And Israel will continue to do what it has to, because this is once for the lifetime, they got this opportunity on October 7th to start rolling back what was existential threat to them, and they will continue on this path. I am not very sure what Saudis are actually thinking right now. They are the most in trouble at this time. The world is at peace, but region is not.
Region is not. Yes, the world is at peace, the region is not, and that really remains the unquantifiable. General Bishambar Dayal also there with us, but before that, let me just quickly bring you up to speed, viewers, with developments in the United States. It's nearing midnight or past midnight there now, but what we can tell you is just about an hour back, President Trump issued a statement, and I'm going to try and pull out that statement and bring in my colleague Shivani Gupta on this. Let's go straight across. Let's go first of all to this breaking news. Hormuz jitters, US claims free passage, Iran cites passage toll, and there are the shipping companies who are feeling the heat. They are caught in this particular bind to give money or not to give money. Shipping companies are wondering whether this is all legal, whether this is an extortion by another means. But let me bring in Shivani here. Let's go straight across to her. In fact, Shivani, let's talk a little bit through the statements that Donald Trump has been making. Come, let's go straight across to her. Shivani, this statement that he has just issued was a clarification pretty much under pressure, wasn't it? He was being sort of beat up, as they say in the Americas,
yes,
by the opposition for conceding too much. So just talk us through this.
So in America, there is a lot of skepticism, there is a lot of caution as far as this conditional ceasefire is concerned. Obviously, some sections of the Republicans are trying to project it as a considerable win for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They're obviously saying that, we have been able to hold Iran accountable, and with the negotiations that will now take place, we will be able to do more of that. This is, of course, what Trump has said.
Yes.
That a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Likewise, has everyone else. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action, big money to be made. Iran can start the reconstruction process. We'll be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around in order to make sure that they follow what we want them to follow. But very quickly, in America, there is a lot of criticism of the fact that actually Iran has a bigger weapon than it used to before this war, which is the Strait of Hormuz. And we still don't know what the negotiation on this is going to be, because Iran is sticking to its point that they want control of the Hormuz. They also want money off the Hormuz. So where do we stand on that? We don't know. There is also criticism and sections of the Democrats, for example, asking for the 25th Amendment of the Constitution to be invoked to impeach Donald Trump because of the quote-unquote genocidal, threat that he made to the Iranian public in that tweet late last night, where he said a civilization.
So here is something else that I hope that we can put this up. This is a tweet by Danny Kemp, and let's put this tweet up by Danny Kemp if we can. There it is by Danny Kemp. We're going to pull that up. Trump calls in with AFP tonight. Basically, Trump called a news agency. He's been taking these calls straight off the bat. Anyone can dial him. Most people in Washington who are connected and covering the White House have his number, and they call him. And what he does is simply picks up the phone and he talks to anybody and everybody. And it's quite informal, but he does say a lot. So according to Danny Kemp, this is the news that is coming out, isn't it?
Yes, Trump has called the ceasefire deal total and complete victory for the United States. Trump says he believes China was involved in pushing Iran to the negotiating table, says Iran's uranium will be perfectly taken care of under the deal without specifying how. So uranium is that other aspect, Rahul. We don't quite know what happened to the already enriched uranium, 400 kilograms of it that Iran has. And Iran is also sticking to the point that they will not completely abandon their enrichment program. So these are some of the details we still need to know more about. There are contradictions between what Iran has said and what America has said. There are gaps in between as well. So maybe the 2-week period will now be used to, of course, work those out. But there's a lot of skepticism if US gained anything from this military offensive, or whether Iran has gained an upper hand instead.
And there's the Prime Minister of Israel. His office has also put out a post.
He's upset.
Let's pull that up also on the wall. If the Director Saab can do that right now. This is the Prime Minister of Israel. The United States has told Israel that it is committed to achieving these goals. There it is. This is very interesting, isn't it?
Yes, achieving these goals shared by the US, Israel and Israel's regional allies in the upcoming negotiations. The 2-week ceasefire does not include Lebanon. Another flashpoint, Israel is not in agreement that they will cease their operations in Lebanon, but there is the opposition, mind you, in Israel that is already beginning to mount pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, saying this is humiliating for us that Israel was not even on the negotiating table as this ceasefire was
But if you read the IRGC statement, it seems to suggest that this is going to be a cessation even against its proxies, its friends. So that would include, of course, the Hezbollah and others in Lebanon. So there is a mismatch already.
I said, 3 to 4 points where there is no understanding or clarity of what will transpire. Strait of Hormuz, whether it will be free, who will control it, and whether it will be taxed. Lebanon, what happens to enriched uranium, and what happens to Israel's offensive.
So here, of course, viewers, is the biggest point of divergence, because we don't quite know how Israel is going to react to all of this. There is pressure already coming in from people like Yair Lapid, who are, of course, the opposition leader in Israel. He's the one who also met Prime Minister Modi just a few days before hostilities broke out, about 45 days ago. About 4 or 5 days before the war broke out, and supported the Prime Minister and the entire speech that the Prime Minister gave in the Knesset. At that point, of course, there was a bipartisan support for Israel's position in India, but here, with its own ally, there could be some big differences. And I want to bring in General Dayal. General Dayal, before I bring in my colleague Akash, to really break down the war militarily with General Pandey. I want your view on this. How do you see Israel playing its cards going forward? Is it going to be a part of the problem, or is it going to be part of the solution?
Thank you. Firstly, Rahul, in a T20 match, you have played the power play so well that there's very little to say. Hats off to your introductory, such an eloquent, perspective that you have given with everything. That I think we can only substantiate it, right? Now let me come to the word, and you took out a beautiful word, thunder out of my word. See, present wars are actually contactless wars. They are actually not so human resources, but they are wars which are being fought technologically. And these wars are also the decisive outcome of these wars, or the military aims or political military objectives are also unquantifiable. The word you used was unquantifiable. They're really unquantifiable. If you really look at it, nobody can quantify how many Hezbollah, Hamas you have decimated, how many IRGC top leadership, what would mean which is the threshold of mean that the moderates are in control of Iran and not the hardliners. You see, these are all unquantifiable issues, but behind all this, there are conducive aims, and I'm sure America had a lot of conducive aims starting this war. It didn't come here just because Israel forced it. Now, let me also close the chapter of Pakistan, which you all have been mentioning. See, Pakistan is is not an interlocutor. He's just a facilitator. And I've been saying on different channels, unfortunately I'm coming to you after a long time, that Pak Army Chief is the only guy, Pak Army is the only guy which has got open channels with Islamic Republic Guards, the top leadership. No other military has that sort of a leeway, which can, because they're not only neighbors, they may have differences, they may have animosity, but they have channels and open, and if somebody could reach IRGC and whatever level was required, I think it was only Pak Army. So they have been communicating and they are facilitator, and actually during the interlocution, if somebody will have some point of view, I think it is only China which may probably somewhere during backdoor channels pressurize Iran on
because
something,
it has
or convey to America something emphatically. Rest are all players. Now
and
let's
don't
come
forget
to
that there is a summit plan between Trump and Xi Jinping in the next few days. So that is also,
So the conducive aim, if it was there to contain, to contain China ultimately after Venezuela, to restrict China free on the energy sources, the way China was having a free with yuan and all those things. Probably there America has failed. No. So ultimately America had to recognize that China exists and China can also one part of the world. Right. Okay. Now let me come to Israel. Israel is not part of the solution. Israel is part of the problem. Israel is part of the problem. See, there was an agreement between the Hezbollah and Israel agreed in 2024, and it was being monitored by United Nations, and it was being monitored by America. It was under the American influence. And was this required at this juncture when you were fighting Iran? You were to start this war. So Iran is, so you started because you have your objective. They have their clear military objective. They want to reach the Mediterranean on one side. They have reached the Mediterranean. Gaza has no relevance. Hamas was an excuse, and they wanted to take entire Gaza. The population also completely under control. So no question now they can make a proper, I'm of the opinion they can make a proper.
Well, that's debatable. That's debatable. What you're saying fundamentally. Yes. What you're saying is that Iran's military objectives are still, Israel's military objectives, you think, are still a bit incomplete. I want to bring in Mr. Dogra on this because it's an important point.
They will remain debatable because you have never, because these are all quantifiable. Can you ever eliminate a thought, an idea, an ideology?
Sure.
You can never.
Sure. So you're saying that Israel will always have a stake in upending the peace because they are very conscious of the fact that the IRGC, which is really an idea, remains in power.
Till Netanyahu is the prime minister, this is a reality. This is what we
let me just bring in Mr. Dogra on this. Mr. Dogra, how do you see it? I mean, do you think that the Israelis have said, look, we've achieved what we had to? Yes, there might always be the odd aim. You can wish for all you want, but wishes don't become horses all the time. So, will they be pragmatic? Will at some level Tel Aviv be pragmatic here?
Well, if one goes by the speculation and things which have come out off and on during the last 40 days, it seems quite clear that Netanyahu had a personal stake in starting and continuing with this war, because there was a lot of opposition building up against him, and there was talk also that he'll be imprisoned as soon as he is out of his position as the Prime Minister. Now, that is in the realm of whispers and conspiracies, but it is also without doubt a fact that Israel has been wanting to punish Iran to a point where it is pulverized. That has not happened. In fact, Iran has given it as much as it has received. So it's a stalemate as far as Israel is concerned, and people in Israel are also troubled that for last 1 year plus, first Hamas has not been eliminated. Now Hezbollah has been very active in pounding Israel. So what has Israel gained by this war and its continuation against Iran? The other point really is the role of Russia and China. They have gained much more than even Iran through this war. Yes. Because they have come out stronger. They have come out as facilitators of Iran in this war against America and Israel by direct and indirect means, by satellite technology and by transfer of missile and other technologies. As for Iran itself is concerned, I think America has succeeded and Israel has succeeded in uniting the people of Iran against a foreign enemy.
Okay, so on the point of Iran, sir, just some breaking news coming in. The Embassy of India in Tehran has issued an advisory just about 5 minutes back saying that in continuation of the advisory of 7th April 2026 and in light of recent developments, Indian nationals still in Iran are strongly advised to expeditiously exit Iran. Remember yesterday, viewers, the same advisory issued by the same authority had said, stick in your places, do not move out of your spaces, be sure to in fact take shelter. And today, after this particular ceasefire, or let's say pause in hostilities has come into place, the language has changed. Indian nationals are being strongly advised now to expeditiously exit Iran, albeit there should be no attempt to approach any international land border without prior consultation and coordination with the embassy. So whatever you do, Indian citizens in Iran, contact the consulates, contact the embassy, and then coordinate your exit, but do it quickly because you have a strong advisory to act expeditiously. So this is the big news. Here are some of the emergency numbers on which the embassy can be reached, and they're right at the bottom of your screens. I just want to quickly bring in also Akash, but we're going to take a very short break. General D.P. Pandey and Akash will take us through the military aspect of this campaign. We'll be right back, viewers, in just a few moments. Stay with us, don't go away.
Morning, thank you for your patience. But the Sensex is zooming, nearly a 3.5% bump up, both with Nifty and Sensex in early trade.
That's correct. So ever since the skirmish started, the Nifty had lost about 3,000 points. So it was only fair that at a point when you did see some signs of peace, there would be some recovery in the markets as well. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And, today is one part of it all where we've seen a big up move of 3.5%, like you pointed out, on both the Nifty as well as the Sensex. But the last 3 or 4 trading sessions, the commentary that was coming around, as the street was awaiting some sort of deadline ending, there was a sense of people buying at lower levels, which told you that maybe a lot of it has been done and maybe we're closer to the bottom than we are to the top. And that's exactly how it's played out. Over the last 3 trading sessions, the Nifty was actually closing positive after 6 weeks of losses. So we had seen a big gash already. And add to all of this, we also got some of the updates coming in from companies as how they performed in the 4th quarter. All these numbers looked a lot better than what the street was fearing. So far, it looks like, the street is looking at going beyond this. Even as the uncertainty around the war continues, the street has put a number to it, and that number on the Nifty is around 22,200. From there itself, we've seen a near 1,700 point rally, and that's exactly what's reflecting in the market. Add to all of this, crude oil prices coming down, the impact that it has positively on our market is the rupee strengthened past 93 as well, closer to 92.5.
True, but where's the money coming in from? Is it all domestic investors, or is there some FIIs also coming in?
Well, it's all domestic investors. Unfortunately, the FIIs over the last 40 days or so on a daily basis have been selling over $1 billion.
Yeah.
The question is whether the FIIs return after this piece or not. The good part, however, is that domestic money will continue to flow even as, we did see that during bad times. We have around 31,000 crores of capital coming into the market every month via SIP. So domestic money is holding up the market. The fact that markets recovering would only, take away the risk of that money going away as well. So far, it's a foregone conclusion that the FIs have not liked our market for a while right now, but there are multiple reasons for that. This war isn't the only one. Let's see whether they return or not. For them to return, obviously, the economy, has to start doing well. The earnings have to start picking up as well, and a lot of other things have to happen. We have to have an AI play, etc. But so far, the fact that the markets recovered from lows and the things look better going ahead takes away the risk of domestic money not coming back as well. I mean, this 31,000, this fear was if that starts to dissipate, then the markets could have gone lower. But that's not happening now, and that's a good point.
What's pushing, or which stocks are pushing up this surge? Oil cos, or are there others too?
No, it is largely a lot of the companies which saw the biggest cuts during this skirmish. So obviously, it's the oil and gas companies, the oil marketing companies which are doing extremely well because they see some of their under recoveries coming off. We have Interglobe Aviation, Indigo, so we have airline companies doing extremely well. The large stock that was the worst hit during this issue was L&T, because nearly 30-35% of their orders come in from West Asia. That stock's up around 10% as well. And then you have bottom list of a tail of all the stocks which would be impacted by higher crude oil prices now.
Welcome back, viewers. We are continuing with our rolling coverage of a story that we broke 4 in the morning. The pause in hostilities in the Gulf is well and truly in place. But just before the pause, viewers, a large number of fiery exchanges took place. Iran was busy targeting Tel Aviv. There you can see, viewers, as also Al Jubail, which is a very important installation, energy installation, viewers. There were also attacks on other infrastructure in the Gulf that was energy related. We also know that there have been several hits on various US bases, and I really want to talk a little bit about the damage right now, the depletion that has taken place in the military resources that are available to the Americans. So we were getting to a point, Akash, thanks for joining me, looks after defense for CNN News 18. Akash, many people were saying that pain points were escalating also on the American side because a large number of aircraft, a dozen personnel unfortunately, and there were several injuries and wounded. So just give me a rundown really of what has been happening on the American side. How badly were they actually hit by this war? And General Pandey will also weigh in. Yes.
So Rahul, this was a war, at a time, at an era where we are dealing with a lot of kamikaze drones, loitering munitions. From US side, of course, they had pitched their advanced aircraft like F-15E and F-35 as well. They were using KC-135, that is a tanker, and then A-10 as well, which is a support aircraft. They normally try to destroy the sort of tanks that we have on the enemy side, and they have used this aircraft in the past as well. Starting from F-15 to A-10 to KC-135 to MQ-9 drone as well. these are the sort of losses, that US forces have suffered. Of course, the troops, they in fact carried out this daring operation where, they claim that they had destroyed their deactivated aircraft. On the other hand, we had Iran claiming that how we have destroyed their Black Hawk helicopters. Black Hawk, remember, is the backbone of their helicopter fleet. They had used, the Black Hawk for a number of missions in the past, of course, for the Osama bin Laden as well. And, these are the advanced aircraft and the helicopters that they have. And all of these helicopters and aircraft were destroyed with what? With the sort of, kamikaze drones or the loitering munitions that they have.
Yes.
And, Rahul, when we talk about the sort of damages that they have suffered, so it is not just limited to it. They have, in fact, lost their air defenses, the THAAD system or the Patriot that they are using. They have lost a variety of resources that they had, in fact, deployed in the West Asia or in the Gulf nations. And at this point in time, while they are somewhere, going to culminate or somewhere negotiating to culminate this war, there is a discussion as to what you have achieved. And, as far as your terms are concerned, so what you had started this war for, and what is the kind of achievement that you have at this point in time, Rahul?
So let me also bring in General Pandey and come along with me, Akash, because we're going to analyze this. General Pandey, had we come to a point where it had also become a little difficult for the United States to continue this particular onslaught, so to speak, because there was a depletion and many people have remarked on the number of missiles, etc. So there was an attenuation, and beyond a point to reach a level where the gains outweigh sometimes, or the losses outweigh the gains. Had we come to that point? Had we come to that pain point?
Yeah, so a major lesson for Indian policymakers and a lot of believers on only tech superiority on expensive platforms, will achieve results. Yes, they can, but as Akash is so very wonderfully warmed up, I'll just keep on rolling out a few things. The bluster of US and Iran, both sides, need to be seen not in terms of bluster but also the pain points. $40 billion counted and much more than that has already been expended, which is direct counted, and indirect cost to America is unknown, has already gone down the chute, actually in terms of chute. The more part is the issue of resilience. Please understand that entire military power of US has not been brought to bear upon it. A portion of central command has been brought to bear. They have been into this fight for about now 50 days and preparation of about a couple of weeks before this when they started moving from variety of places. So when you look at it, this whole endurance part of the forces which have been involved is a major issue and challenge. So the degradation is not only in destruction, but is also in terms of endurance. People have been in the fight non-stop. Only 2 aircraft carriers, one has gone back, one is available, and these fighters have been taking out flights not of 1 hour worth. They are flying distances of about 1,500 kilometers across the region, 400 to 1,500 kilometers, to be able to cover entire Iran and carry out those operations which are extremely difficult. So credit goes to the fighters and everybody who's been fighting on behalf of the Americans. So that degradation in terms of human endurance.
Let's also, General Saab, just hold your thoughts because we're getting big news and I want Akash's input on this. We are hearing that the Raksha Mantri will be holding a meeting today at 3 p.m. So that's the big news. Defense Minister calls meeting over the West Asia war very significant because, Akash, we know that the Defense Minister has been actively taking a great interest not only in the theatre of operations but also in the munitions that are being used and has been reviewing, in fact, the battle as it has been unfolding. What's happening here?
Right. So, Rahul, you see, India has got its stakes as well. We have got a number of vessels in that particular area. And you must be remembering the day when we reported that how, a US-UK base in the Indian Ocean region was attempted by Iran. On that particular day, in fact, the first meeting happened. In fact, we are learning about this meeting that is about to happen, where Defense Minister is going to in fact review the situation. Of course, it's a concern for us because it is happening in our neighborhood, and there are a number of things where Indian Navy is involved or Indian Armed Forces are involved, and then we know that how we have got our adversaries too.
Very quickly, I also want to ask you, yes, on that point of adversaries and of course of the munitions and tech use, will this influence perhaps the way India procures equipment going in the future?
Yeah. Of course, because you see, there are a number of countries on which, we are dependent as far as our procurements are concerned. We are, buying jets from France. We are, in fact, you must be remembering S-400. We were about to receive S-400 in April only, but then it got delayed, and a senior official told me that, the West Asia impact is there, and that's why we are going to receive the S-400 in May month. So, of course, our procurement, since we are dependent on a number of countries, even when we are focusing on Atmanirbharta, Rahul, we know that how we are dependent on countries like France. So, of course, these conditions are going to impact us as well in terms of procurement.
And we'll also have to modify our purchases because we are seeing the efficacy of certain weapon systems, viewers, which have worked better in certain theaters. And perhaps we'll also have to build that learning into the way we are going to be addressing our own strategic needs. We leave it at this, viewers. Lots more coming up, including the headlines, and there are big developments which we will be reporting. Stay with us. Don't go away.
To the newsroom, Anand Narsimhan is joining us here. Pakistan being reduced to a WhatsApp forward of diplomacy is the buzz really on internet. And remember the kind of posturing Pakistan was attempting, Anand. So it becomes very interesting in the larger scheme of things with the Pakistan Prime Minister completely exposed with this draft message.
True, and also Kanchan Gupta taking a pot shot saying that External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was right in calling Pakistan a Dalal nation because they are pimping out to put food on their plate. That's the kind of language that's being used, and I'm quoting Mr. Kanchan Gupta, who's come out and said that a state given to Dalali aka pimping out to put food on its plate. No PM of a half-decent country would put out a public statement, a post on X, whose draft clearly came from someplace else. And that was because, viewers, that draft said Pakistan's PM message on X. So there was an error there also, which was pointed out by some of our guests. How would you do that if you have allowed the Prime Minister's X post handle to be given to somebody else to cut paste and cut copy paste? So this Control C, Control D, Control V, all of that has only got Control E for, that is embarrassment for the Pakistanis, and that's clearly being highlighted at this point. And there's one after the other. It's missteps by the Pakistan leadership, be it Asim Munir or be it Shehbaz Sharif. Every time they try and project Pakistan as playing an important role in the region, they shoot themselves in the foot and expose themselves all the more that they are nothing but doormats or messengers which are being used by those to whom they are subservient to. China on the one hand, and here US-Israel on the other, because Pakistan is a nation which was caught in the bind because it was trying to express solidarity with Iran while it had a security arrangement with the Saudi Arabian, and Saudi Arabia was very, very upset. The language they used against the UAE, also one of its leaders, has also not done it any favor in that particular region, and everybody will remember. They don't forget so easily the utterances. But this act itself shows that Pakistan has not only outsourced its diplomacy to somebody else, it's outsourcing even basic posts of the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
No mind of its own is really the message that's come out, and that's what critics are pointing to. Thank you so much, Anand, for that. Let's give you an idea of how the internet is responding. Those are the messages that have been coming in on social media since the last few hours. So we'll try and pull out some of those messages for you. This is an American journalist, Brian Grimm, who's taken to social media, and look at this, he's actually quoted this edited post. So you see at the bottom of the screens there is that word draft, that phrase draft, Pakistan's Prime Minister a message on X. Now he says this is unbelievable. The edit history on this tweet shows that Pakistan Prime Minister originally copy pasted everything he was said, including this remember phrase, viewers, is really the biggest talking point as far as the story is concerned. Draft Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. Why a the question being asked by netizens is, why is it that if this was being posted by the Prime Minister's official handle, would it say Pakistan's Prime Minister? And the other, of course, the key word being cited is the word draft. So this is the edit post. We'll try and go back and pull out a couple of others. This is, of course, the meme fest, as it turns out to be. Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X, the translated version, Dalal, as we were just discussing, with something which is something that India has also highlighted, or rather criticized in the past. All right, there's another meme there that you see, possibly AI generated meme, explanation of Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's draft tweet, and you see how the internet is really cracking on this one as well. We'll go over to more.
An 11th hour ceasefire has been brokered in by the United States and, of course, Iran. What we are being told is that there is going to be a meet in Islamabad on 10th of April, which is Friday. Remember, Israel has already declared that they will continue to target Hezbollah in Lebanon. Is the ceasefire going to hold is the big critical question. Who stands to gain? Who stands to lose? We'll be breaking that down for you in the next half hour. But first up are the headlines. A very warm welcome to all our viewers. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Let's get started. After a warning, civilizational, in fact, the US president has said that there is going to be an end to Iran's civilizational bullying, and United States has now reached a conditional ceasefire for 2 weeks, Strait of Hormuz to open up. Formalization expected soon. Iran sets 10 conditions for ending the conflict. It claims US has agreed on lifting of sanctions against Iran, no attacks on axis of resistance. Iran claims they reserve control over Hormuz to levy fee with Oman to ensure safe passage of ships. Trump says US will help with traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz, which will also perhaps help Iran in generating income to pay for the damages. The Strait of Hormuz jitters are on this as shipping companies seek guarantees. The US claims a free passage. Iran cites passage toll. Meanwhile, the German Chancellor has said appropriate measures will be taken to ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Disquiet in Israel. This over Iran-United States ceasefire. Reports claim Trump dialed Netanyahu to inform him of successful negotiations. Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid has called the ceasefire a political disaster. Israel issues evacuation warning to residents of the city of Tyre in southern Lebanon and says it will launch strikes. And this is how the markets are reacting. Nifty tops 24,000, Sensex surges 2,900 points on US-Iran ceasefire. European gas prices have dropped by a sharp 20% decline after US-Iran 2-week ceasefire announced. And hours after Donald Trump announced the ceasefire, Indian embassy in Iran has released an advisory asking Indian nationals to exit Iran at the earliest. And this is what the US Congress has been reacting like. Republicans are hailing peacemaker Donald Trump, but Democrats are skeptical. They have slammed loss of face for the US president. There's chorus for his removal, which continues as Americans are now paying the price for this fall. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has boasted of mediation in Iran-US conflict, but technology exposes him. Sharif's Twitter post, drafted by US, leaves Pakistan red-faced because you can see on that tweet, draft for Pakistan Prime Minister. Pakistan plays host to Iran-US talks to finalize conditional truce. Tehran confirms meeting in Islamabad, a 15-day timeline for permanent solution as well. There's a conditional ceasefire reached. Focus now in-person talks. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump, even the Middle Eastern envoy Steve Witkoff are all set to hold talks with Iran in Pakistan this Friday. Pakistan is now gloating, but is China the real mediator? Because the US president said he believes China was involved in pushing Iran to the negotiating table. right, let's quickly go across to Poonam, who will share all the latest developments with us. Poonam, it's over to you for what's happened in the hours before the ceasefire was announced and what to expect.
Absolutely, and it's been a rolling coverage here on CNN News 18 since this morning, since the news broke out about this pause that has now come to the fore. There was only a few hours that were left before that deadline ended for Donald Trump, for Iran. But a ceasefire came in. In fact, it was just about 90 minutes or so before that deadline ended when the announcement of a ceasefire came to the fore. This, of course, is conditional. It comes with some terms and conditions. The 2-week ceasefire with Iran is in place until negotiations further formalize that particular decision. This follows direct appeals from Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir, as has been claimed by United States, who urged Washington to hold back any more strikes. Now, moments after that announcement, Donald Trump struck an optimistic note. He called it a big day for world peace. He said Iran has had enough and wants the conflict to end. Donald Trump said that this pause in military action is conditional, subject to Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz for safe and immediate passage. Tehran, meanwhile, has agreed to the ceasefire, but not without sending a clear warning. This is not the end of the war, is a clear message that Tehran has sent, claiming that any violation will trigger a sharp response from their end. For now, there is a pause, but it's tense, and this entire conflict could unravel any minute. We are as close to escalation as we can be, but will this truce last? That's really the big question that everyone seems to be watching out for.
All right, on that note, let's quickly get our viewers the breaking inputs that we are getting in, because remember, a lot hinges on the markets and how the markets respond. Many are saying that the US president is also buckling under pressure because of the stress on the global markets, and this, as we are being told, US crude oil price is down by 16%. While Brent crude oil is down by 15% after a 2-week ceasefire. Remember, markets seem to be bouncing back. For how long? All depends and hinges on for how long the ceasefire is going to hold. But more importantly, we've seen a sharp decline in the prices, which were hovering around $118 per barrel. They've gone sharply down to over $91 per barrel. Reports are indicating that this is the sharpest decline one has seen in Brent crude prices ever since the time of COVID. But as of now, US crude oil price down by 16%. This could indeed mean good news for Americans, but will that have any impact on what the US thinks about their president? Let's quickly go across to Poonam.
And we'll continue that discussion with my colleague Akash, who's joining us from the newsroom here, getting us more details. Now, we've seen how the entire oil market has been seeing the sign of seesaw since the war began. 38 days in, there seems to be some relief coming in as far as oil prices go. For the first time, they have come down below the $100 barrel a mark. Akash is joining us, getting us more details on this front as well. And when we dive into this conversation, it is important to note that yes, those prices have slumped, but they're not back to pre-war levels, and that's something that is keenly being watched out for. Akash, as far as oil prices, crude prices are concerned, advisors, analysts are going to be looking at it, but it's going to take some time for it to come to pre-war levels because there has been so much destruction at all the production facilities.
Of course, and Poonam, you see, energy is one thing, that has seen the maximum impact of this war. We know that how Strait of Hormuz, in fact, has been a contested area, and in fact, from the beginning, we have been seeing that how Iran has said that they are going to block it, and because of which, because of the blockage as well, we have been seeing that not just India, but other countries, which are in fact dependent on the particular route, are impacted. And yes, after the announcement, we are seeing a dip. And, it is below, in fact, $100. But experts say that, if you want a normal condition, then you'll have to allow some more time. And for that, you will, in fact, require the cessation of the activities, at least, if not permanently, then for some time at least. And this is the reason why, in fact, we have been, seeing a sharp decline in the prices. Since morning, we have been tracking this. And Strait of Hormuz and the entire route has been the biggest reason for it, Poonam.
Absolutely. So will that settle down from here on? We don't know just yet. But Akash, there is hope, at least as far as normalizing is concerned. And that's exactly what we've seen in terms of markets as well. Not just Indian markets, global markets have also jumped on the fact because oil prices have gone down.
Oh yes, and in fact, just a little figure, Strait of Hormuz is an area, from where around 130 ships used to pass. And these 130 ships used to, in fact, go to countries like Pakistan, countries like Bangladesh, countries like India. And now, during the war, we have seen that how this number, dropped down to just 6 or 7 ships on a daily basis. So one can, in fact, understand the situation. One can get an idea as to why these prices are going up to a level, and then why suddenly, when the acknowledgement has come from both US and Iran, why we are seeing a sharp decline as well.
Akash, for the moment, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. So whether these prices will stay or not, whether they'll go down further, well, that's anyone's guess, but that's really what the world is hoping for. Akanksha, my colleague, getting us more updates coming in from the CNN News 18.
Oh, absolutely, because Poonam, let's also break it down for our viewers in terms of whether or not this ceasefire is going to hold. But as of now, let's go by facts. What does it mean? To begin with, this threat to pause the high stakes brinkmanship has been used as a diplomatic tool by the US president himself. But remember, this is also going to set a dangerous precedent, because every time Donald Trump doesn't get what he's looking for, he is going to threaten complete decimation or annihilation of a state. Secondly, Hormuz has been at the heart of the deal, which means that they've agreed to a ceasefire also on Iran's 10-point terms acceptable. Is it going to also lead to a veto over the ship passage? That is something we will have to find out. Trump, of course, has lost more than he has gained. You're also looking at other factors. Let's quickly go across to what Hormuz means over here, because the Strait of Hormuz and the reopening is going to decide the future negotiations or the possibility of negotiations, as has been indicated that it will be happening this Friday, whether the ceasefire holds or collapses. Because remember, the assurance coming in from the Iranian foreign minister is that they are now prepared to coordinate with the IRGC to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. 2-week window, it's a pressure valve for negotiation, not a resolution. As many have been talking about how this is indeed the gateway to peace, but not the destination itself. You're also looking at the big questions. The US pauses operations, but uncertainty still looms large over how fully Iran will comply. Will Iran continue to target? Because remember, soon after that announcement was made, there were missiles targeting UAE and even Israel. At the same time, there's domestic pressure being built on Netanyahu. Israel's endgame dilemma is that should they participate in this negotiation or not, if it continues to back the pause or not. For how long is the big key critical question. At the same time, Pakistan's movement, it has, remember, also positioned Pakistan as a bridge to de-escalate. It's also a big win for them. Also a global brownie point as far as Pakistan and the appeasement with the United States is concerned. Then you're looking at the overall impact on the markets, which we are already seeing happen. Prices have softened, but not to the pre-war levels, as production infrastructure still needs repair. Also, for how long will these prices hold if the ceasefire holds or not? Much depends on that. Let's quickly go across to Poonam, who will share more details with us. Poonam.
And speaking of those markets, Akanksha, in fact, we do have an update as far as Indian markets go. Nifty has topped 24,000. Sensex has surged about 2,900 points. This is on the back of the announcement of the ceasefire between the two countries, United States and Iran. In fact, CNBC TV18's Mangalam Malu is now joining us, getting us more details on this. Mangalam, as far as markets are concerned, it seems like all sectors are rallying over this particular announcement.
Obviously, across the board, there has been a fair amount of a rally that we've seen in the last two trading sessions, most in today's trading session. If you notice, over the last month and a half, ever since the skirmish started, there was a lot of fear, uncertainty and bearishness, which was bottled up. And now with this sort of ceasefire that has been announced, at least for the next 2 weeks, that bottle has been opened, and there is a gush of liquidity going into the market. Though, two things we need to know: whether this gush of liquidity sustains or not. Secondly, what's the color of this liquidity, whether it's coming in from the foreign institutional investors or it's coming in from domestic institutional investors. But just again, to put things into perspective, before the war started, the Nifty was around 25,500. it fell 3,000 points all the way down to closer to 22,500 points. And now it's recovered about 1,500 points from there. It's at 24,000. Before the war started, actually oil was around $67 per barrel, went all the way up to 120 and now down to around 93. So yes, the new normal is a little above the previous normal, and as a result of which the stock market, while it is recovered, it has not gone back to its all-time highs because fear has just dissipated, not disappeared. But good going for the markets nevertheless. A lot of these oil marketing companies which had seen a big decline have now started to see some buying come back. Companies like L&T, etc., which had some exposure to West Asia in terms of orders, they had fallen about 30-35%. They are bouncing back as well. And in the interim, we saw all the safe haven stocks, which are the consumer stocks, the pharmaceutical stocks, as well as some of these IT stocks, which saw some purchases, have now started to underperform, largely because other parts of the market are doing well. So people are unwinding that risk off trade and going risk on.
Mangalam, is it also true that this is a record decline in Brent prices, which remember have seen a 20% decline? Many are saying that this is the sharpest decline since COVID times.
Well, this is the sharpest intraday decline that we've seen since COVID times. But then again, we'll have to put into perspective, the kind of rally that we've seen already. And remember, the ceasefire is a binary agreement, right? It's a binary event. So up until, the war was on, the crude prices rose from $67 all the way up to $120. So a near doubling of crude prices. And as soon as the ceasefire has been announced, it's down 20% from the peak. So just on a day's basis, it looks like it's the sharpest decline that we've seen since COVID times. But we're still a good 50% above pre-war levels. So let's not look at just today's move and, extrapolate that, because over the last 6 weeks, it's nearly doubled.
Absolutely. Mangalam Malu, thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18 and putting that in perspective for us. We'll, of course, keep a track of what transpires, not just in the realm of Indian markets, but the Asian markets are also rallying. We'll have the Western markets up in a few hours from now as well. But whether this peace is going to be a lasting one, is there going to be tension and uncertainty over it, and for how long that's going to last? We'll try and put that in perspective here. Joining us on this broadcast are former Foreign Secretary of India, Shashank, Milad Rabbani, former Iranian diplomat, is with us, regional affairs expert Brahma Chalani is with us as well. Let me begin by asking Milad Rabbani, what are your hopes from the negotiations that are going to take place in person? There is a 15-point agenda that has come in from the United States side. There's a 10-point agenda from the Iranian side. For now, they seem to have agreed to negotiate, which is why this 2-week truce has come in. But there is common ground to be found. Is that what you believe?
What I can tell you is, even before we observe some craziness in the foreign policy of the United States, and if I want to give you one example, they spent billions of dollars and 20 years to replace Taliban with Taliban in Afghanistan. And now this is exactly what I'm seeing in Iran. They spent a huge amount of money and killed many people, and even they suffered many casualties. And for what? Really for what? The conflicts between Iran, the Iranian regime, and Trump administration is huge. And I believe it's very hard for them to reach any conclusion by negotiations, especially the Iranian regime now is the winner of this war. And this war was a gift from Trump to Iranian regime, and I don't know really what kind of advisor and chancellor are surrounding Donald Trump, and for what they are, and no one warned him about the consequences of this war. The consequences, just look now what's going on. The Iranian regime becomes stronger, has the upper hand. And I believe it is an important task for American civil society to investigate Trump, to hold Trump accountable for this craziness.
Professor, okay, I want to quickly bring in Professor Chalani on that note. Professor Chalani, the big question is, now that we are looking at 40 days of this war, whether or not the ceasefire holds, we get to know in days and rather hours from now. But more importantly, who has gained what? If you were to look at sort of a scorecard that we've been calling on both sides, break it down for us in terms of the US gains versus the Iranian gains.
For Trump, this is a major strategic defeat. He will be facing nagging questions as to what he gained by launching this war of aggression. This was a war that was launched without any provocation, and it has undermined US credibility internationally. This was a very unpopular war internationally as well as within the US. The war has left the same regime in place in Tehran. That regime, before the war, appeared quite weak, but thanks to the war, it has become stronger. Then the war has left the Gulf states, the Gulf Arab states, reeling from the destruction and the damage to their energy infrastructure. It will take a long time for example, Dubai to regain its reputation as a playground of the world's rich. But not only has the energy infrastructure in the Gulf been damaged, but even desalination plants have been hit. For the first time, water became a weapon of war. And then the third thing is that Trump's own political base at home stands fractured because of this war that he launched. There is a divide within the MAGA base of Trump. And I think that is quite ominous given the fact that the midterm elections are looming large and the danger that the Republicans may lose both houses of Congress. If that happens, then there would be a fresh move to impeach Trump. In fact, just yesterday, hours before Trump agreed to the ceasefire, more than 50 Democratic members of the US Congress asked for his removal. That was extraordinary that so many members of Congress sought removal of Trump because of the kind of statements that he was issuing. He appeared quite unhinged in the eyes of most people. And I think his own credibility has taken a beating because of this war.
In his approval or disapproval ratings, as you would call them, and going into midterm elections, that's perhaps one of the pressure points or the pain points that Donald Trump felt, that it was time for him to take a step back about where this war was going. But Ambassador Shashank, I want to ask you, as far as both sides holding up their end of the bargain is concerned, do you think when they do meet face to face, if those talks happen on Friday in Pakistan, that this could yield results that will actually amount to something, or do you think that actually might make matters worse?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
We don't know as yet. For the time being, we can only conclude that the American democracy has finally won, and the kind of statements which had come from the American president lately showed that they were reaching almost the same stage as at the time of President Truman when atom bombs were used on Japan. And we felt that here we had reached once again, after so many decades, a stage where the American democracy will not be able to put pressure on its president to take into account the wishes of the people, the mothers, children, and all kinds of people in America and in the world. Second thing was also, while President Trump was not that much bothered about the Arab states, but perhaps there is a lot of friendship between him and the Field Marshal Munir and the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But I'm quite sure Pakistan must have told them that if you do anything in Iran, Pakistan would definitely get affected because these westerly winds move from west to east. And India will not be affected as much. It will get affected, not as much as Pakistan. So I think President Trump is very, very mindful of the welfare of the Pakistani military leadership. And I think that also perhaps maybe the second reason.
Okay.
But I don't know the question which you have asked me, I don't know where does it lead to.
So,
will it lead to a peace completely or not? I'm not very sure.
The Iranian perspective also will decide that, for which I will quickly bring in Milad. But Milad, just hold on to those thoughts, because we are also getting in a CNN News 18 mega exclusive. Poonam will share the details with us. Poonam.
In fact, what we're learning right now is that Pakistan's announcement of the Islamabad Accord, as they're calling it, and the hosting of US-Iran talks appears largely a damage control tool under American pressure. This is what intelligence sources here in India are indicating, that it was under pressure from the United States that Pakistan came out to gloat that they were the mediators in this particular case. US wants to step back from this particular conflict, while Iran is leveraging the situation. So this is what we're learning from our sources here in India, of what exactly this picture is, of why it is that Donald Trump announced the ceasefire about 90 minutes or so before his deadline was to end. Remember, he had promised or vowed for an entire civilization to end before he actually came to the negotiating table and agreed on this truce. So how is Pakistan playing into this entire scenario? Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Poonam, more than Pakistan, it's also the US that seems to be rather looking bad with this entire negotiation, because in these exclusive inputs that have been brought to us by investigations editor Manoj Gupta, what we are learning is that this was a US-induced ceasefire. They, in fact, asked Pakistan to act as mediator. That entire tweet, which says draft for the Pakistani Prime Minister, is already doing the rounds. It's going viral on social media platform X, and this is not really putting Pakistan in a good light. But look at the cost of this war for the United States of America. Against the asymmetric warfare of IRGC, of Iran, America has been sending a lot of money out, shelling a lot of money out, whether it is about their defense, whether it is about the Tomahawks, anything that is against that asymmetric warfare really is that added cost for America. And that's why possibly this ceasefire has been arrived at. And also one must look at the 10-point peace plan that has been sent out by Iran, that is inclusive of the fact that they will continue to enrich uranium, that is also talking about a straight transit from that Hormuz choke point, with a levy, with a fee that was decided in the Iranian parliament, by the way, on the 31st of March, which suggested that they have in fact spoken about new rules for passage of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, which is completely opposite of what UNCLOS suggests. They will be charging that levy of $2 million. US doesn't seem to be saying anything about it, Poonam. And the fact that they have now said that we will probably get in every guarantee that is there. They could be talking about security cover. They could be talking about the vessels being escorted by the US. But they have said nothing about that fee that Iran claims will be charging for the passage of the vessel, which they will be splitting with Oman. So what does it suggest? This is basically saying that United States of America wanted an end to this entire war, but everything is in the hands of the IRGC. It's and in fact the Iranian president has come on record, and he in fact has said that it's the IRGC that's calling the shots, and that's what the suggestion has come about. So what happens after these 2 weeks, we do not know whether this peace plan really lasts, and that is really the big question, because if at all things do not come to the table as has been planned, IRGC might continue the attack. Retaliation again is going to be coming in from America and Israel, because Israel definitely is not standing down. They are not liking these negotiations, whichever way they are headed, Poonam.
Absolutely, Griya. Thank you so much for getting us the latest on that. So when, if at all, this truce falls flat, it is not egg on the face of Donald Trump, perhaps in the egg on the face of Shahbaz Sharif. Is that how this was guided to be? That's a question many are asking and looking out for. We'll keep a track of that and much more here on CNN News 18. But for now, time for a quick break.
To the newsroom, Anand Narsimhan is joining us here. Pakistan being reduced to a WhatsApp forward of diplomacy is the buzz really on internet. And remember the kind of posturing Pakistan was attempting, Anand. So it becomes very interesting in the larger scheme of things, with the Pakistan Prime Minister completely exposed with this draft message.
True, and also Kanchan Gupta taking a pot shot, saying that External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was right in calling Pakistan a dalal nation because they are pimping out to put food on their plate. That's the kind of language that's been used, and I'm quoting Mr. Kanchan Gupta, who's come out and said that a state given to dalali, pimping out to put food on its plate. No PM of a half-decent country would put out a public statement, a post on X, whose draft clearly came from someplace else. And that was because, viewers, that draft said Pakistan's PM message on X. So there was an error there also, which was pointed out by some of our guests. How would you do that if you have allowed the Prime Minister's X post handle to be given to somebody else to cut paste and cut copy paste? So this Control C, Control D, Control V, all of that has only got Control E for, that is embarrassment for the Pakistanis, and that's clearly being highlighted at this point. And there's one after the other. It's missteps by the Pakistan leadership, be it Asim Munir or be it Shehbaz Sharif. Every time they try and project Pakistan as playing an important role in the region, they shoot themselves in the foot and expose themselves all the more that they are nothing but doormats or messengers which are being used by those to whom they are subservient to. China on the one hand, and here US Israel on the other, because Pakistan is a nation which was caught in the bind because it was trying to express solidarity with Iran while it had a security arrangement with the Saudi Arabian, and Saudi Arabia was very, very upset. The language they used against the UAE, also one of its leaders, has also not done it any favor in that particular region, and everybody will remember. They don't forget so easily the utterances. But this act itself shows that Pakistan has not only outsourced its diplomacy to somebody else, it's outsourcing even basic posts of the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
No mind of its own is really the message that's come out, and that's what critics are pointing to. Thank you so much, Anand, for that. Let's give you an idea of how the internet is responding. Those are the messages that have been coming in on social media since the last few hours. So we'll try and pull out some of those messages for you. This is an American journalist, Brian Grimm, who's taken to social media, and look at this, he's actually quoted this edited post. So you see at the bottom of the screens there is that word draft, that phrase draft, Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. Now he says this is unbelievable. The edit history on this tweet shows that Pakistan Prime Minister originally copy pasted everything he was said, including this. This, remember, phrase, viewers, is really the biggest talking point as far as the story is concerned. Draft Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. Why the question being asked by netizens is, why is it that if this was being posted by the Prime Minister's official handle, would it say Pakistan's Prime Minister? And the other, of course, the key word being cited is the word draft. So this is the edit post. We'll try and go back and pull out a couple of others. This is, of course, the meme fest as it turns out to be. Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X, the translated version, Dalal, as we were just discussing, with something which is something that India has also highlighted or rather criticized in the past. All right, there's another meme there that you see, possibly AI generated meme, explanation of Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's draft tweet, and you see how the internet is really cracking on this one as well. We'll go over to more. There's another interesting comment that's coming from Mahesh Jethmalani. He again says Pakistan's Prime Minister didn't just post on X, he accidentally posted the instructions too. And you see this one grab here, viewers, the edit post is now being reposted heavily, and then Pakistan is being trolled. This could really have been a big diplomatic success, but this is how it played out eventually for Pakistan. He's of course gone on to say how this may be the most honest thing to ever come out of that office. At least now the world knows even Pakistan's diplomacy is
This election season, the biggest voices, one platform.
राहुल गांधी कह रहे हैं कि आपको अरेस्ट करेंगे.
राहुल गांधी का बाप भी मुझे अरेस्ट नहीं कर पाएगा. वो पागल है.
It's a Tamil Nadu versus NDA fight. It is not a DMK versus NDA fight.
Today a voter is fed up of the CPM, is fed up of the Congress. He will vote for the NDA.
There is a huge anti-incumbency. Now we are confident that we will come back with 100+ seats.
രാഹുൽ ഗാന്ധി യഥാർത്ഥത്തിൽ BJPയുടെ ഒരു B ടീമായിട്ട് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നത്.
Exclusive interviews, unfiltered conversations, sharpest analysis. Battle for the states, only on CNN News 18.
Thanks a lot for staying with us here on CNN News 18. I'm Shivani Gupta. We're getting you the latest as it is transpiring since the conditional ceasefire was announced a few hours ago. The world is still on tenterhooks because nobody quite knows the exact contours of this conditional ceasefire and if it will hold for too long. But in the meantime, Prime Minister of Pakistan, Abbas Sharif, has made a major faux pas, has embarrassed himself and his country yet again. He has unintentionally spotlighted the behind-the-scenes nature of the diplomatic push for this ceasefire. An early version of his social media post shows supporting this extension of Trump's deadline and urging a ceasefire was briefly published with a visible line which said draft. So this is that post that we're talking about. This was the original post. It says between asterisks, draft Pakistan's PM message on X. Now, yes, your office could be drafting your tweets, etc. But the fact that it says Pakistan's PM message on X seems like there is an external entity or agency or country that has been involved in drafting this message for the Pakistani PM. So where did it come from? That's the big question. Exactly who was dictating, if at all, the line to be taken by the Pakistani Prime Minister on X? Of course, he corrected it later and then, of course, removed that draft line and it just had the text of his tweet, which, of course, was talking about the immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, effective immediately. He said, with greatest humility, I'm pleased to announce the Islamic Republic of Iran and USA, along with their allies, have agreed to this immediate ceasefire. But the damage has been done. In a way, the cat is out of the bag, and it is clear that Pakistan is trying to project a greater role than it possibly played as far as these quote-unquote negotiations are concerned. Yes, it has been publicly trying to posture that it was involved and it was the mediator party between the two countries that were possibly not talking directly to each other. But why was a message drafted for him and why was it supposedly drafted by an external agency is the big question. Let's go across to our guest joining us, Anand Ranganathan, author, Sushant Sareen, senior fellow, ORF, both joining us. Sushant Sareen, you see this as a clear faux pas on the part of Shehbaz Sharif and his office letting the cat out of the bag?
Yes, look, it was very clear that Pakistan was playing the messenger boy. There was no doubt about it. And I think from all accounts, it seems that these are the things that the Americans told them to write. And then the Pakistanis must have been asked to draft a similar message. And they sent it across to seek approval of the Americans. So something like that must have happened. Obviously, this is quite an embarrassment for them to put this on air. And of course, they will become the laughing stock. But look, as of now, I think they seem to be basking in the glory of having managed a ceasefire in which the Americans have thrown in the towel and completely bucked pressure, have lost this conflict. The Iranians have won virtually everything. I don't think even the Iranians can imagine how much they could have won and how much they have won. They've virtually gotten away with everything.
And more, including now a different situation as far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, which was open and free before this conflict began, but now seems to be conditional to Iran's negotiations. But I'll come to that in just a bit. Anand Ranganathan, I want to take your first views as well on, Pakistan Prime Minister's faux pas. This whole attempt that Pakistan has become synonymous with of trying to project more than its boots. I mean, there is a limit to this. There is a limit to how much you can do this and for how long. And it seems like, certainly the faux pas today on Twitter has kind of exposed them to a certain extent.
I'm afraid there is no limit to it. So you're absolutely wrong there. Every single day, both Trump and his cronies in Pakistan wake up and say, how will we make up more fools of ourselves than we did yesterday. You can see it from the screenshot that you're showing of the Pakistani Prime Minister. Look at what his handle is called. It is still CM. He's not yet even bothered to change that to PM. So, and the fact of the matter is, obviously, it is not the Pakistani administration, establishment, or the PMO or whatever it is, equivalent of, that has done this. Because let's look at it this way. If a message has to be posted by, let us say, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the PMO drafts it. I'm sure there are many things that are drafted for him. Yeah, the PMO will never say from Indian Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I'll say for our PM.
Yes,
you know.
yes. Or just Prime Minister.
Or just Prime Minister. So obviously this has been done by the Americans. But the fact of the matter is, even if it was done by the Americans, I don't know why, for heaven's sake, Pakistan is trumpeting this, because at the end of the day, Trump has accepted a deal under which Iran will control Hormuz, except that it will tax passing ships now. Iran will enrich uranium, except that it will speed it up now. Iran will build missiles, except that it will stockpile them now. And Iran will choose its leadership, except that it will be more hardline now. So, किया क्या change क्या किया है Trump?
Exactly. Mila kya? That is the big question. Has US lost more than it gained? There is also domestic opposition in both America and Israel now to contend with for the leaders of both of these countries. But first up, let's go across to some more breaking updates coming in. Advisor to the President of the United Arab Emirates, Anwar Kargash, has said that the UAE emerged victorious in a war that it sincerely sought to avoid, adding that it now heads to navigate a complex regional landscape with a solid capacity to influence and shape the future. That's what the word from the UAE is. This is the advisor to the UAE president. But of course, they're accepting that this is a war that they sincerely sought to avoid, but it now heads to navigate a complex regional landscape with a solid capacity to influence and shape the future. Sushant, how do you read into this message that has come in from the UAE top brass?
No, I think, to be quite honest, the UAE is putting up a brave face because frankly, they've been left in the lurch. I think UAE, Saudi Arabia, all the Gulf countries, the GCC countries, are left without any feet to stand on. Their apprehensions vis-a-vis Iran are now going to be peaking because, as Anand was just saying, Iran has virtually become the regional hegemon. They now control the Strait of Hormuz, which means that the Persian Gulf is like their private sea now, in a manner of speaking. The Iranians might act a little... Look, remember one thing, the Iranians have always treated the Arabs with a lot of contempt. Iranians might now play like, the big brother in the region, which the Arabs will not like. I'm sure the Arabs are seething. I'm sure the Arabs would also be seething with the role that Pakistan played in getting Trump to agree to this kind, or exchanging these messages without informing the Arabs about what exactly was being offered by the Americans.
But that's not clear, right? Sushant, that's not clear, to be honest. I mean, the American conditions or preconditions to a ceasefire versus what the Iranian conditions are to a lasting ceasefire or cessation of hostilities, they're still quite different. So, we don't quite know what happens with the Strait of Hormuz.
How are they different? Look, in the post, although he is quite unhinged, but in the post Trump has put out, where he said they have agreed to an immediate opening of the Hormuz. Has he said that Iranians will not tax whatever moves from there? Has he said that it will not be under their supervision? He hasn't said that. What is he going to do? Start bombing them again? Does he have the stomach for that? Having seen what has happened to the Americans, the kind of beating that the Americans have taken, Trump used to keep poking fingers at us about how he made peace between India and Pakistan, and how many planes got shot down. Let's talk about American losses now. It's been an ignominious defeat for the Americans. Ignominious is the word. Yeah, they might have done a lot of wreaked a lot of havoc in Iran, but at the end of the day, they have literally given the Iranians everything. They've given the Iranians more than what even the Iranians would have expected. Maybe the Iranian demands were their maximal demands. The Americans agreed on them.
Yes.
What are the Americans?
So what Donald Trump indeed say on the Strait of Hormuz was also quite complex and quite confounding. He said there is money to be made. Now what does that mean? Is America going to be partaking in whatever tolling is going to happen at the Strait of Hormuz? He said we're going to be around. We're going to be quote unquote hanging around. That Iran follows whatever terms Americans will set for them. None of this that is clear, none of them is emphatic. It's actually, as Sushant is putting in, a little bit of a backtracking, and taco is the word that comes to mind. But before I go to Anand, also we have some more updates coming in. Macron, the French president, has urged the need to respect the ceasefire deal terms fully across the region. He says a ceasefire must include Lebanon. Now remember, it's not just the Strait of Hormuz, it's also what happens in Lebanon and its proxy Hezbollah versus Israel is the big question, because Israel was not part of these ceasefire negotiations. It's not very happy with it, reports are suggesting so. Opposition in Israel is up in arms that this is humiliation for Israel, and they're charging on the Israel Prime Minister, the Israeli president, and also there is of course no confirmation of what happens in Lebanon, because Israel has just a short while ago announced an advisory for citizens to move out of a certain area in Lebanon because there are strikes coming. So Anand, there is much more to be known right now. We don't quite know what is this ceasefire contour and how much of it will be adhered to, because every different side has a different view.
No, and not only that, Shivani, I feel bad for, I think the world is beyond the stage where it can feel bad for Trump or America. But I feel bad for Israel. Because the fact of the matter is, Israel has always acted responsibly, has always been seen as a brilliant strategist when it comes to escalating militarily or defending itself. It's got an egg on its face. Let's be very blunt about this. And the fact is, as far as the ceasefire is concerned, here was America that wanted to blunt or dismantle an unstable nuclear power in Iran. And it's gone to an unstable nuclear power of Pakistan to broker peace. I mean, the irony itself is just delicious. But at the end of the day, what did America or what did Israel get out of this? As I said on day one, unless there is a regime change, they would get absolutely nothing. They might restructure the nuclear deal. They might restructure what Iran has to do, how you will monitor Iran. But at the end of the day, as long as there is a despotic regime that kills its own people in place, they will never ever be able to change anything on the ground. And that is what has happened. Deal or no deal, ceasefire or no ceasefire, a new mechanism or no new mechanism, because the regime is same. In fact, it is much more hardline now. Because
than it used to be.
Yes, I mean,
absolutely.
The feeling of revenge is seething right now in Iran.
Yes, and possibly another cycle of violence that has been initiated because the quote-unquote, military objectives, political objectives of this conflict have not been achieved, either by Israel, which is very open about it, that they still want to continue, or by US, because they still have a son of Ali Khamenei now in helm, who's not willing to budge from Iranian position. You've got no clarity on enriched uranium as is. You've got no clarity on whether Iran would be allowed to continue to enrich uranium, which they seem to be insisting upon. Strait of Hormuz, we don't know what happens to it, how soon it opens, and actually who controls it. Lebanon, the proxies of Iran, if they are also allowed to get away scot-free, then what has either America or Israel gained? We're in fact getting more updates now. Sources close to the terror group Hezbollah have told Reuters that they have halted their fire on northern Israel and Israeli troops in southern Lebanon as part of the US-Iran ceasefire. This is what they are saying right now, but again, as I mentioned, Israel doesn't seem to be fully on board with what has transpired. It's kind of keeping its cards close to its chest. It doesn't want to spoil the party just yet for America. Of course, it's a key ally, but there are already domestic rumblings starting. So Hezbollah says they have halted attacks in northern Israel and parts of Lebanon where there are Israeli troops. Will that mean that Israel will also be forced, coerced, convinced to come on board to say, okay, halt your attacks and strikes for 2 weeks at least till some final resolution can be worked out? So Shant, I want to come back to you one more time. How do you read this situation? Because all reports indicate Israel wasn't part of these negotiations and isn't happy with what the end result is as of now.
Look, it was not just Israel that wasn't part of these negotiations. Even the Arab states were not part of these negotiations. They were not in the loop. And frankly, if you look at both Israel as well as the Arab states, they would of course be seething with anger because they have been, none of their concerns are going to be met. Now, in the case of Israel, for example, let's say that this ceasefire lasts, you reach some kind of a deal in which you say, okay, fine, no more firing will take place. Will the Hezbollah stop building up its stockpiles of missiles and rockets? Because eventually they will attack Israel because they cannot countenance the existence of Israel. The Americans have now gotten their fingers so badly burned by the stupidity which this Trump administration, he tweeted this in the morning. It seems like Donald Trump is a cross between Yeltsin and Gorbachev. And America has got somebody who is as dissolute as Yeltsin and as clueless as Gorbachev. And in the American system, there is no resistance to this kind of a character running amok, who threatens genocide, who threatens to wipe out a civilization, who buckles up, buckles under and goes on his knees to look for peace. You have to be utterly unhinged to be doing something like this. But will the American system now back Israel the way it used to back Israel? We be sure about that. In the Arab states, for example, there will be deep sense of insecurity because if nothing else, they will have to kowtow to Iran. Can you imagine for the Arabs, very self-respecting people, to have to pay a toll tax to Iran to get their oil and gas out of the Persian Gulf?
So could there be more? Sushant, could there be more? Could there be behind the scenes something else being worked out, some other plans being made? Because that is also a theory floating around.
What other plans?
Well, there is a 2-week cessation of strikes, but anything can happen. We've seen what ceasefire, quote unquote, means in the past.
No, look, we know, but we've also seen what America can do and what cannot do. We've seen the limits of American power. We've seen the fact that the Iranian capacity for retaliation and causing damage in the rest of the region has turned out to be very successful. Initially, when they started attacking the Arab states, one thought this is a strategic disaster what the Iranians have done, but it turns out that they had understood the region much better than anybody else. They understood that the Arab states will not want to escalate matters, that they will keep taking the blows that Iran is administering to them, and frankly, to their credit, the UAE, the kind of projectiles and missiles and drones that were flung at the UAE has performed rather well. I think credit needs to be given to the UAE.
So most of the American Israeli allies would be wondering what the hell happened here. Why did we do what we did? Israelis are wondering this. Many Americans are wondering this themselves. And there has been criticism and pressure on Donald Trump. It's just that the way his administration is currently functioning, there's not much else that anybody can do or say. But I'll leave it at that. I do thank both of our guests for joining us. There is, of course, some amount of relief as far as what has transpired because continued hostility strikes was keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed, making it very risky for ships to pass. Yes, India had some success in getting as many as 8 to 9 vessels crossed for its immediate needs, but that was not going to be sustainable. So, with now a suggestion that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be open, India has been one of those friendly countries to Iran. In the past, Iran had said that they're not going to tax or stop India-bound vessels. So what does this mean for India? One, of course, is that it eases some of the energy pressure as the Strait of Hormuz is expectedly about to open, but we still don't know how it will function. The uncertainty around LPG supplies in India could possibly end. Imports bill will also come down because already we've seen a crashing of the crude prices and maybe it will go to its pre-war level as well. Lower rupee volatility as far as the dollar is concerned, that will also reduce hopefully. Trades may get costlier if Iran imposes Hormuz levy though. That is why everybody is a little relieved but still on tenterhooks on what happens.
We'll continue to get you the latest. Stay with us. Time for a very short break. Lots more coming up on the other side.
Date of poll is 9th April and the counting.
When states turn into battlegrounds, only one team leads the charge.
Political moves from the halls of power.
The largest deployment of reporters on ground where issues hit harder.
India's most incisive analysts.
The most powerful technology.
Turning signals into sharp insight.
Because when the stakes are this high,
there's only one place to be.
Battle for the States, only on CNN News 18.
To the newsroom, Anand Narsimhan is joining us here. Pakistan being reduced to a WhatsApp forward of diplomacy is the buzz really on internet. And remember the kind of posturing Pakistan was attempting, Anand. So it becomes very interesting in the larger scheme of things with the Pakistan Prime Minister completely exposed with this draft message.
True, and also Kanchan Gupta taking a pot shot saying that External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was right in calling Pakistan a Dalal nation because they are pimping out to put food on their plate. That's the kind of language that's been used, and I'm quoting Mr. Kanchan Gupta, who's come out and said that a state given to Dalali aka pimping out to put food on its plate. No PM of a half-decent country would put out a public statement, a post on X, whose draft clearly came from someplace else. And that was because, viewers, that draft said Pakistan's PM message on X. So there was an error there also, which was pointed out by some of our guests. How would you do that if you have allowed the Prime Minister's X post handle to be given to somebody else to cut paste and cut copy paste? So this Control C, Control D, Control V, all of that has only got Control E for, that is embarrassment for the Pakistanis, and that's clearly being highlighted at this point. And there's one after the other. It's missteps by the Pakistan leadership, be it Asim Munir or be it Shehbaz Sharif. Every time they try and project Pakistan as playing an important role in the region, they shoot themselves in the foot and expose themselves all the more that they are nothing but doormats or messengers which are being used by those to whom they are subservient to. China on the one hand, and here US Israel on the other, because Pakistan is a nation which was caught in the bind because it was trying to express solidarity with Iran while it had a security arrangement with the Saudi Arabian, and Saudi Arabia was very, very upset. The language they used against the UAE, also one of its leaders, has also not done it any favor in that particular region, and everybody will remember. They don't forget so easily the utterances. But this act itself shows that Pakistan has not only outsourced its diplomacy to somebody else, it's outsourcing even basic posts of the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
No mind of its own is really the message that's come out, and that's what critics are pointing to. Thank you so much, Anand, for that. Let's give you an idea of how the internet is responding. Those are the messages that have been coming in on social media since the last few hours. So we'll try and pull out some of those messages for you. This is an American journalist, Brian Grimm, who's taken to social media, and look at this, he's actually quoted this edited post. So you see at the bottom of the screens there is that word draft, that phrase draft, Pakistan's Prime Minister a message on X. Now he says this is unbelievable. The edit history on this tweet shows that Pakistan Prime Minister originally copy pasted everything he was said, including this remember phrase, viewers, is really the biggest talking point as far as the story is concerned. Draft Pakistan's Prime Minister message on X. The question being asked by netizens is, why is it that if this was being posted by the Prime Minister's official handle, would it say Pakistan's Prime Minister? And the other, of course, the key word being cited is the word draft. So this is the edit post. We'll try and go back and pull out a couple of others. This is, of course, the meme fest as it turns out to be. Pakistan's Prime Minister's message on X, the translated version, Dalal, as we were just discussing, with something which is something that India has also highlighted or rather criticized in the past. All right, there's another meme there that you see, possibly AI generated meme, explanation of Pakistan Prime Minister Abbas Sharif's draft tweet, and you see how the internet is really cracking on this one as well. We'll go over to more. There's another interesting comment that's coming from Mahesh Jethmalani. He again says Pakistan's Prime Minister didn't just post on X, he accidentally posted the instructions too. And you see this one grab here, viewers. The edit post is now being reposted heavily, and then Pakistan is being trolled. This could really have been a bit...
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us here on CNN News 18. We're keeping a very close watch on what happens as far as the conditional ceasefire between US and Iran is concerned, but lots more lined up on the show.
Absolutely. I am Griha Atul. Let's first begin with the headlines. After warning civilizational end, Iran and United States reach conditional ceasefire for 2 weeks. Strait of Hormuz to open up, formalization soon.
Iran sets 10 conditions for ending the conflict, claims US has agreed on lifting of sanctions against it, no attacks on axis of resistance.
And more claims by Iran as they are talking about reserving control over the Strait of Hormuz to levy fee with Oman to ensure safe passage of the vessels. Trump says US will help with traffic build-up in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, the jitters around the Strait of Hormuz continue as shipping companies seek guarantees. US claims free passage, Iran cites passage toll. Meanwhile, German Chancellor says appropriate measures will be taken to ensure freedom of navigation.
And what's happening with Israel? We are learning of disquiet over the Iran-United States ceasefire. As far as Israel is concerned, reports claim that Trump dialed Benjamin Netanyahu to inform him of the successful negotiations. Israel opposition leaders called the ceasefire political disaster, and Israel has issued evacuation warning to the residents of the city of Tyre in southern Lebanon, and has also said that it will launch strikes.
Nifty tops 24,000. Sensex surges 2,900 points on US-Iran ceasefire. European gas prices drop 20%.
And hours after Donald Trump announced the ceasefire, Indian embassy in Iran released advisory asking Indian nationals to exit Iran.
Meanwhile, back home, there's a political storm between the TMC and the Election Commission in Bengal over a get lost versus shouting claims. All right, let's begin with that big update that we're getting. The face-off between the Election Commission and the TMC has turned into a full-blown political flashpoint. Sources say TMC delegation led by Derek O'Brien that met the Election Commission. The meeting lasted only less than 10 minutes and quickly turned heated as Chief Election Commissioner Gyanesh Kumar began to respond to TMC's concern. Derek O'Brien reportedly interrupted, saying the delegation was not there to listen.
We're also learning about what followed. It turned out to be a rather ugly exchange with both the sides allegedly losing their cool and sharp remarks that were being traded before the TMC delegation walked out eventually. Election Commission has since issued a strong message promising that West Bengal polls will be free and fair and also fear-free, violence-free as well. Are they preempting something disastrous? That also is something that is doing a lot of and generating a lot of chatter, but TMC leaders are pushing back. Saket Gokhale has called the Election Commission's version a lie, claiming that the Chief Election Commission told them to get lost. And he's also challenged the Commission to release the meeting transcript. For now, all we see is claims and counterclaims and a fresh political confrontation ahead of the crucial polls in the state of West Bengal.
I want to tell you what the election commissioner Chief Election Commissioner told us within 7 minutes of the meeting. Get lost. This is what the Chief Election Commissioner told the Trinamool Congress delegation. Nikal jao yahan se. Nikal jao yahan se. Ye election commissioner bola last mein. तो हम निकल जाए. हम लोग निकल आए.
Let's go across to our colleagues joining us. Joining me is Arunima, tracking what is happening as far as that meeting claims are concerned. Arunima, this has become he said, she said. But what is it that you are learning? What actually transpired? And if that meeting ended on such a bad note, what led to it? Who's to be held responsible for, the meeting transcending to a point where allegedly the election commissioner said, get lost?
See, one thing is very clear, whichever side you want to believe, either TMC or Election Commission, what is very clear is that even basic civility, basic cordial behavior that is extended to either opposition MPs or to constitutional functionaries like election commissioners, that seems to be a thing of the past. It is very clear that TMC wanted to press forward with their point. The sequence of event, as we have been told by sources within the Election Commission, is this, that once the meeting began, Derek O'Brien, who was leading the TMC delegation, he pressed forward the issues that they had. These issues were pertaining to, the election CEO, the CEO of West Bengal. There are allegations that he's hobnobbing with the Bharatiya Janata Party. So that was the primary accusation that was leveled by TMC. There were other allegations that we have been communicating, writing letters to EC. They are not being responded to. And third was their overall concern about the manner in which SIR and election process is being conducted. So when we are told Ganesh Kumar, CEC, after taking down notes, tried to respond to what Derek had said, the allegation is that Derek O'Brien turned around and said that we are not here to listen to you, we don't want to hear what you have to say. To this, it seems, and this is an allegation from TMC, CEC lost his cool and the get lost jibe was made. And that is when the TMC delegation stormed out of the room. We are told that the Election Commission members present there told TMC that to maintain the decorum of the place that they were in. The Election Commission's decorum is a constitutional position that should be maintained, but TMC was very upset. They stormed out, and it is being alleged that while storming out, Derek O'Brien apparently looked at Ganesh Kumar, the Chief Election Commissioner, and said, I hope you sleep well. That is being seen as a threat towards the CEC by the TMC. So it's back and forth and looks like complete breakdown as far as basic civility is concerned.
Right, absolutely. Arunima, do stay on with us. We are now getting some more breaking news on the broadcast, and this is as per the Election Commission sources. During this briefing of the observers by the Election Commission of India, it was observed that Mr. Anurag Yadav, who is the general observer of Cooch Behar, Dakshin, did not even know the number of polling stations in his assembly constituency. He has been immediately recalled by the order of the commission. My colleague Arunima with that detail. Arunima, what is going on over here? Because this is coming in at the backdrop of several letters that were sent out to the election commission, and now we are learning about how the observer of Cooch Behar did not even have the basic stats right. Arunima? Alright, we seem to have lost that link with Arunima, but that's her information. We'll try and re-establish that connection. But Pallavi, would you want to weigh in? A lot of drama that has ensued. Now we are getting this latest details that Anurag Yadav was the general observer of Cooch Behar Dakshin, did not even know the number of polling stations, basic maths is not right. So direct accusation, counter accusation that is coming about. Derek O'Brien saying that EC chose not to respond to several of the letters that we sent out to them, and that's why eventually we had to storm in, and then this really ugly spat and confrontation really broke out.
So is that question for me, Shivani?
Yes, Pallavi.
Okay, so Shivani, in fact, you're seeing immediate posts, one after another, being put out by the Trinamool Congress, and the latest one of them being in Bangla. So it is very clear that as far as the Trinamool Congress is concerned, they certainly don't want to be caught on a back foot. They don't want it. They certainly do want this to become a political issue. The fact is that Derek O'Brien going inside, telling the Election Commission that I hope you sleep well tonight, and also those points coming in that, they shouted and there was no civil exchange of words, and the TMC trying to come out with their own version of things. Right from the word go, it was TMC which really wanted to take on the Chief Election Commissioner. in fact, the architect of that impeachment notice against the CEC and calling him Mr. Vanish Kumar, who according to the TMC is going to vanish once the electoral results of Bengal come out, was the Trinamool Congress. In both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, it was their endeavour to ensure that the opposition parties, despite their many differences, come together on this topic. It failed because, as we all reported, the impeachment motion was rejected by the Vice President as well as by the Speaker Om Birla. And even now there have been press conferences after press conferences, and there's another one around 4:30 where a long list of political parties in the opposition spectrum has been given. So the TMC certainly would want to make this into a poll issue. They already have. And why are they doing so? Because what they are trying to tell the voters of Bengal that this is a BJP who wants to come to power in Bengal because they misuse all the institutions. They are so desperate for power, and that is why they are even using the election commission to come out with an election which is not going to be free, fair and non-partisan. And that is the reason it's very strategically timed. The entire TMC delegation going to Nirvachan Sadan was not sudden. It was very much well planned, orchestrated to try and make the larger point that even as Bengal prepares for polling on 23rd and 29th, the Trinamool Congress is prepared to take on the EC because they want to try and convince the voters over here that elections are not being fair over here. The SIR exercise, the EC being very selective, clearly helping the BJP. So therefore the voters of Bengal must be on guard.
Yes. And Aman, there's been a very uncharacteristically strong reaction by the Election Commission officially through their X handle. Never before have we seen situation like this prevailing ahead of an assembly or any election. But the EC going on to say that they've given quote-unquote an ultimatum to the TMC, that these elections in Bengal are going to be fear-free, violence-free, that none of what used to happen is going to happen, is the message. And we've never really seen them responding to a political party quite like this.
Characteristic tweet by the Election Commission of India. Certainly, the tweet saying that ECI did some straight talk to the Trinamool Congress that this time election in West Bengal must be fair-free, inducement-free, violence-free, as well as intimidation-free, because what has become a hallmark of West Bengal elections of the past is that, certain parties' voters are not even allowed to come out and vote. There have been repeated complaints, and that is why this time over 2 lakh central forces have been posted in West Bengal, because ECI has made it clear repeatedly that it wants a free and fair election in West Bengal and no violence will be tolerated at all. But Shivani, at the center of what has happened today at the ECI, this exchange, I think, between both the sides is also the deletion of the 90 lakh voters, 90 lakh in West Bengal. They may be dead voters, they may have moved out, they may be voting in different places now, but the number 90 lakh is something that I think Trinamool Congress is extremely bothered about. There are about 60 plus seats in West Bengal in 2021 assembly elections, which the Trinamool Congress had won with a margin of less than 10,000 votes. What impact will the SIR 90 lakh vote deletion have on those 60 to 70 seats would actually determine this election, and I think that is why the TMC has been extremely upset with the Election Commission of India, calling it even the B team of the BJP. But now I think the Election Commission of India has also had enough of these TMC's charges, and that is why we are seeing these uncharacteristic tweets even coming from the ECI, where they're clearly saying this election would be without any chappa, any booth jamming, any source jamming. People should be allowed to vote free and manner, and that is why so many central forces said. So I think swords are drawn out between the Trinamool Congress and the ECI over especially the 90 lakh SIR deletion which has happened in the state.
Yes, and Mamata Banerjee, after filing her nomination, has also addressed this very deeply. She has accepted almost that she's concerned about what has happened. But keeping our focus on what we're learning from the Election Commission sources, during the meeting of the observers by the Election Commission of India, it was observed that Mr. Anurag Yadav, General Observer of Cooch Behar Dakshin, did not know even the number of polling stations in his assembly constituency, and he has been immediately recalled by the order of the Commission. My colleague Arunima is joining us with more on this. Arunima, just explain this to us. Why would a general observer be unaware of these details, and what has merited this action against him?
So like what we just put out for our viewers, Election Commission officials say that when this observer was asked about the basic details of the constituency under him, it seems the observer was completely clueless, and Cooch Behar is one of those constituencies which have become like battlegrounds. There are a number of constituencies in West Bengal which are being treated as a battleground constituency by the TMC and the BJP. Cooch Behar, it seems, is one of them. So after taking in its view about the observer not being qualified enough for this duty, EC has decided to go ahead and make this change for Cooch Behar. Overall, if you see, this was in fact one of the concerns raised by the TMC delegation that went there about the kind of decision that EC is taking for moving out staff members. A number of transfers have happened. A number of officials have been moved out from their respective positions, and TMC feels that this is only to help the BJP. When they made that allegation, when they met the election commission, the full commission today, EC of course rejected it, but soon after came this decision for Cooch Behar. EC is adamant, and it has put out in its tweet also that it will do whatever it takes to ensure that these elections are violence free, inducement free, thapa free, booth jamming free, and is irrespective of the criticisms, irrespective of the impeachment attempt that was made by TMC and other opposition leaders. EC says we are going to stick to these 7 points that have been decided.
Right, absolutely. Arunima, do stay on with us. We are now getting some more breaking news on the broadcast, and it does seem that after that massive showdown, Trinamool Congress is choosing to play to the galleries, because this time there is a post by Mahua Moitra that has been put on social media platform X, and this is what it reads. Ultimatum by the ECI to the Trinamool Congress is like Trump's ultimatum to Iran, and we all know who won that round. Mahua has posted this after the Election Commission's post to the Trinamool Congress, and this is what we are picking up. So they are not backing down after this alleged shouting match that had happened inside this chambers with Derek O'Brien allegedly shouting at the Chief Election Commission. Now this tweet by Mahua.
Yes, and why this response? Because remember, as we said, Election Commission had posted on platform X earlier, and this is a translation of what they have posted in Hindi as well. Straight talk to Trinamool Congress. This time the elections in West Bengal would surely be fear-free, violence-free, intimidation-free, inducement-free, and without any raid, booth jamming and source jamming. Very, very unequivocal words there, a warning of sorts to the election by the Election Commission to TMC. And Pallavi, as we were talking about this earlier, we've not seen this before. This is unprecedented times and unprecedented language and posture by the Election Commission to a political party.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, Shivani, when was the last time round when we saw elections being also where the Election Commission has become the main fulcrum? And this is exactly what has happened in the seesaw between the BJP and the Trinamool Congress, but over the Election Commission. So very quickly, the entire SIR exercise was mooted by the EC to ensure that it's the legitimate voters who get to vote. And it is not just about Bengal. Many other states have also gone through. But Bengal faces a problem, especially in the border areas which are very porous to Bangladesh, Dinajpur, Malda, Murshidabad. In those areas, it's a fact. For many of us who have visited there, we actually have seen for ourselves that there were people who were crossing over from the border. They were getting the right to vote. They had rights to ration cards. They were given Aadhaar cards. And according to the BJP, this was legitimized by the state administration or the Mamata Banerjee government. Well, the Election Commission stepped in as a part of the SIR exercise to ensure that those who are not a citizen of Bengal, who are not Bengalis, they are the ones who are weeded out. So the whole mantra became the one who is a Bengali is the only one who deserves the benefit of the schemes of the state and the central government. Now, the BJP put that point of view across very strongly. The Trinamool Congress did not see it from that prism. They saw it as a prism of systematic targeting of the traditional vote bank of the TMC, which is the minority vote bank, because that is what the EC was being used by the BJP to do so, and that is why today Gyanesh Kumar has become the man who has now become a person who's become a kind of a symbol of tug of war between the two sides. So when you see these scenes being played out inside the Nirvachan Sadan, I'm not too surprised. I think in the days to come it's likely to get more and more vociferous and more aggressive.
Right, and also Aman, if we go back to this Mahua latest tweet that has been put out by Mahua Moitra, do you think it is just bringing down this entire gravity of this situation? Because on the one hand, there are several of those allegations that are coming to fore by the EC, and this is what the tweet is suggesting, Derek O'Brien, we are told, allegedly even shouted at the Chief Election Commissioner, Gyanesh Kumar. And now this by Mahua Moitra, trying to, in fact, draw parallels with what's going on in the world to what's happening in West Bengal.
Well, yes, it is definitely stretching it a bit too far by Mahua Moitra. But, what is happening here also is, Shivani, that, that the TMC is also trying to tell its voters that, it's really going to Delhi, it's meeting the ECI, it's creating a scene because it's standing up for the voters whose votes have been cut. For example, when the violence happened in Malda, I remember speaking to Saugata Roy, senior TMC leader, and he said, this is the natural reaction of common people whose votes have been cut. If your vote is cut, how will you react? And he said, this is illegal cutting of votes. And that is why TMC is also trying to tell its core constituent voter that, look, we are fighting for you, we are going to the ECI, your votes have been unjustly cut. And it's also trying to consolidate the rest of its voters under one forum, that, whose votes have not got cut. TMC is trying to tell them, look, you all should consolidate and make us win, because Mamata Banerjee soon after the Malda violence had also said that this violence is being engineered. People should not protest violently because the centre may put president's rule. Even that she has alleged. And let us quietly win this election. That's what Mamata Banerjee had issued a statement then. So I think it's all at the crux of all this. As I said, it's a 90 lakh voter deletion. The TMC is worried about that. The TMC feels that the election could change because of that, because the bulk of the voters could be of the TMC, and that is why TMC is creating such a hue and cry about the SIR exercise and taking it to EC, and even the kind of scenes we've seen inside the Nirvachan Sadan today morning.
Yes, and why is that crucial? We'll of course keep breaking that down here on CNN News 18, the districts that are most affected and how many deletions have happened. For example, in Murshidabad alone, there are 4.5 lakh people who've been struck off the voter rolls, and there are many such districts with over 2 lakh such numbers. But we are getting more responses from the TMC now. They have posted in Bangla now a response to the Election Commission. We are also speaking straight to the Election Commission in a straightforward manner. They say this time the elections must be free from Delhi's control, free from political bias, free from targeted persecution of anyone, and certainly free from double standards. This time the elections must be free from Delhi's control, as they're saying, and political bias. And Pallavi, interestingly, they're saying free from selective targeting of anyone. They're actually not naming minorities. In the last few recent days, I've sensed that there's a change of tactic from them where they don't want to make it about one community alone. They're just saying the most marginalized are getting struck off the rolls and they are being inconvenienced. But clearly, the TMC taking to platform X as well to say the EC is just a stooge of the political, powers that be in Delhi.
Point, Shivani. One, writing in Bangla is obviously a clear cut reaching out to the Bangla voters of Bengal, of West Bengal, and you're going to see Mamata Banerjee in the next couple of days. In fact, even now, even as we speak, after filing her nomination, wherever she's going to be going, she's going to raise a larger point that these are the outsiders who are coming in, and they're those so desperate to win power that they're using every institution, ED, CBI, as well as Election Commission. Second, frankly speaking, Trinamool Congress has a reason to be worried about if there is a division of the minority vote bank. It is a huge population over here. Malda, Dinajpur, Murshidabad, Nadia, which happens to be Moitro's area. Krishnanagar, she is a member of parliament from there. That has always voted Mamata Banerjee back to power. She has very much depended on it, so much so she never had any qualms about the fact that she was very openly indulging in appeasement of the minorities. And she has often been criticized for this. Now it is this which is being shaken for two reasons. One, because of the SIR exercise, a large number of them who are illegal immigrants who are coming in from across the border, they have been weeded out, so they won't get a right to vote. That's one. Second, politically speaking, the entry of Owaisi, Humayun Kabir, then there's Abbas Siddiqui of the Furfura Sharif, all of them are small players, and one may be cynical about them, about being a factor, but that could end up polarizing or division of the minority vote. So if you combine these two factors together, Mamata Banerjee has a reason to, kind of sweat, and that's the reason why she's repeatedly trying to appeal to what is being called the Bengali Asmita or pride, that here are the Bohiragatos, the people from outside who are coming in. They're so desperate, they want to use the Election Commission, and they are weeding out your own people who are the minorities who are being targeted. It's the women, it's the minorities who are being targeted, and therefore she's trying to ensure that her so far staunch vote bank doesn't turn its back to her, or she doesn't lose out on that vote bank.
Right, Pallavi, Aman, do stay on with us. We have Kamalika also joining us with some more breaking news. Let's take a look at that. We're now learning that the Chief Election Commissioner has put out this word to the observers that violence in West Bengal will not be tolerated under any circumstances. He's also said that those against whom there are allegations of involvement in previous violence instances, past violence, they must be placed under preventive detention. This is a big development, ladies and gentlemen, because this comes with a surety of arrest. Police observers have been directed to actively enforce this, and individuals with prior allegations of spreading violence must be bound down. These instructions were issued by the CEC, Gyanesh Kumar, during a meeting with the observers, and this is what Kamalika is bringing for us. Kamalika, more on this. What are the changes that you have begun seeing on ground as well?
See, EC has been very tough from the very first day, and EC has been very much committed that there is going to be a fear-free and intimidation-free election this time. For that, we know that every day meetings are taking place. Today, Gyanesh Kumar had a meeting with all the observers, and let me tell you, which is there, that the Kuch Bihar observer has already been asked to come back because there were certain questions which were asked to him and he failed to answer. The Election Commission is very tough. We have seen suspension of police officers, those who were trying to control the situation. That is a very important point, and there they have clearly said that history cheaters, troublemongers, troublemakers, everybody has to be behind jail if there is any problem, anything there on ground. So definitely violence will not be tolerated. That's a clear message. The message has been given time and again to the administration. This time the EC has communicated this to the observers that even if it is anything, even if it's a small violence, even if it's a scuffle, case should be registered and immediately arrest should take place so that those troublemongers are not there on road. That is the main motive of Election Commission. That's what we are having it from the sources. But having said that, this election is also about a big war that has come up between ECI and TMC that we have been discussing. And today on the Twitter handle, we have seen how the tutu meme has taken place. But EC very strict on the observers. No type of violence or any intimidation. We have seen that in 6 instances till now there has been intimidation and that person of TMC has been arrested. Not only that, Ratna Chatterjee, who is a sitting MLA, is also a candidate. There has been an FIR against her also.
Not surprisingly, this stance by the EC, because these elections are almost a litmus test of the Election Commission and its capabilities and its own, integrity, its own public image as well. Because if things are the same on ground, despite such efforts, then it will fall into the court of the Election Commission. Aman, very quickly, you've been talking about those deletions ranging up to 90 lakh in West Bengal. It's making the TMC allegedly very nervous. Anywhere from 60 to 80 lakhs have been deleted in other states as well. We've seen in the past in Bihar, in Tamil Nadu, the numbers have been ranging between 60 to 80. So why is the number of 90 lakhs being looked at so, with suspicion in West Bengal?
See, Shivani, last time as I was saying, there are about 55 to 60 seats in West Bengal won by the TMC with narrow margins of less than 10,000 votes. And if you extrapolate this entire 90 lakh number across West Bengal, certain seats could become really close. And that is what the TMC's fear is, that, through this SIR, is the BJP trying to make this election very close and get an unjust advantage in certain seats and win them, and that is why TMC could lose power. And what I've been speaking to the top BJP leaders, in fact, as you correctly say, in other states also the number has been big, 60 lakh, 70 lakh. So